the repercussions, I mean, can reach us. But like I said, we haven't been out and about in America yet.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we haven't gone to any of these gigs that have been thrashed, and we haven't had. I mean, the album's still relatively fresh, and you know, the opinions, you know, everyone's opinions still haven't made their way back to us yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you're really sort of in a vacuum. You don't really know what you've sort of stirred up.
Yeah.
Until you get there.
Yeah, and I mean, also, it's a lot of it still hasn't kicked in.
Yeah.
I mean, when I say that, I mean, you know, our headline tour, you know, our whole show, and the all the publicity that comes with that. I mean, that's still impending.
Are you going to be doing a show? You're doing the show without an opening act?
Yeah.
Are you going to be? How long a show are you going to do?
It depends on how many songs we feel like playing. I mean, what I mean by that is it's not going to be a night-to-night thing. It still hasn't been decided how long we're going to play yet. It's going to be a pretty long show, but then again, our last show was pretty long.
Yeah, it was still almost 2 hours.
No, it was over 2 hours. It was over 2 hours.
Oh, actually, yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, I mean, by the time we had, you know, finished bullshitting and doing everything else, it was over 2 hours. And by the end of the tour, it was getting to be like, you know, really long. I think that had to do with it just being the tour. But we're gonna have I really don't want to say too much about it because what we're doing is something that's, you know, so different. No one's ever done it before, and
well, the thing is, this really won't be out until the tour starts.
Yeah. Okay, well, I mean, no one's ever done anything like this as ambitious as this before. I mean, we're changing the shape of the stage, and we're putting the stage in an unconventional spot. It's not going to be at the end of the hall. It's not going to be in the middle. It's going to be like 3/4.
Really?
Yeah. And nothing's going to be stationary on the stage. Nothing, you know. All the things that usually stationary on the stage aren't going to be. And it's designed with the audience in mind so that we can have, you know, full contact with them.
Yeah.
And we can really get down amongst them. And we're even going to have kids on stage.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know if I should be telling you this.
Cool. Oh,
I don't know if I should be telling you this. I really shouldn't. Maybe you should ask the other guys this question too, and if they tell you as much as I tell you, then you know it's probably going to be okay. But yeah, we're gonna have people on stage too, and it's definitely made from the audience point of view. I mean, it's gonna enable us to come closer to the audience, and you know, all that shit about the stage being at the end of the hall. Once you've had this, you'll never turn back.
Well, what was it like going to the Garden and for that listening?
Now that was wild.
I actually had to be out of town that weekend, which really bummed me out because I really wanted to go.
Yeah, you know, I thought you might have been there, but I figured maybe you had other commitments.
Yeah,
but
I couldn't get away, but it was really a drag because I really wanted to go.
I was really, really, really nervous. I couldn't explain why I was so nervous. I was just very nervous. I guess
like having a gig but not playing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I felt when it started, I thought, wow, so what should I do? And I got for a second there, I was like kind of disoriented because like we're not going out on stage, but this is a Metallica gig.
Were you nervous that people might not like the record?
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
Because essentially you're playing it to the people who would buy it. It's not like they're going to hear one song on the radio. You're giving them the whole thing.
But what happened was video intro started, and the crowd just started. I mean, they started roaring, and it was a great thing. And they showed a brief history, and it was like, you know, approval all the way through. And then it came to the part, you know, to the present, you know, the album, and you know, the stage is set, and you know, Sandman, first track, and by then, But then, you know, people saw it. You know, the video had been out for maybe 2 days on MTV, 2 or 3 days, and there was some sort of recognition. And then we played 3 songs, and people were loving it. And I was watching from like a doorway that was sectioned off. And I thought, what should I do? And I all of a sudden got a big burst of energy. So I grabbed some friends of mine. I said, let's go out in the audience. And I said to our tour manager, I'm going out in the audience. He goes, you sure? I go, yeah, I'm all right. I ran out there. I started walking along. I was looking at people. There's kids headbanging in the seat. People looking at other people and nodding along and nodding their approval. And I was saying, fuck yeah, this is all right. And then MTV was there and they had their lights on a bunch of people and they were digging it. And I walked around some more because they had the lights off, and so it was pretty safe for me to go out there without causing too much of a ruckus. And I saw this one guy in a wheelchair, and I tapped him on the shoulder and I go, hey man, how you doing? And he jumped when he realized who it was. And I go, do you like the album? He goes, yeah, it's fucking great. Right on, man. I shook his hand and walked off. And then all of a sudden I looked behind me and there's like 50 kids chasing me. And like the guy with his wheelchair chasing me too. I go, uh-oh, this could be dangerous. I better go now. And I ran to this one guy who had his banner. He brought a banner with him. And I said, hey, cool. I signed the banner and I said, well, I gotta go. See you guys. And then after that, it was cool. Yeah. But for some reason, I felt like I had to go out there and get amongst it.
See what they really thought.
Yeah, and afterwards, I felt a lot better. I felt relieved. I wasn't as tense or as nervous as I had been. And then at the end, we weren't planning to go out, but we went out anyway and said hello, and it was James's birthday. And
fuck you, James.
Yeah, fuck you, James. And it turned out real nice.
What was the audience reaction to Nothing Else Matters?
People were very quiet, and then after it ended, they applauded, and that was one of the things that we were curious about, and they're just grooving on it. And they applauded afterwards. They were applauding after what we did was we played them in batches, 3 and 3 and 3.
Oh, I see.
And but they're still applauding after every song, and it was really cool. It was quite an experience. It definitely was an experience.
Who came up with this idea?
Cliff and Peter and the record company.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did you think it was sort of? What did you think of the idea?
I thought about it and I thought, it's really cool experiment. I thought, it's.
Did you wonder if anybody was going to show?
Well, we figured if it was free.
Yeah.
And since it was free, there had to be, at least someone there. But we really didn't. I don't think any of us expected it to turn out the way it did.
Yeah.
I mean, it turned out really cool. I mean, it was really something special, and it was different enough for us too. And after it was a success, I think everyone felt that it was just one of those chances that we took that we were right about.
Yeah.
And we really didn't have that much to lose. I think if anything, so what? They didn't show up.
So the garden was empty. The Knicks didn't play.
Yeah, exactly. And there was actually some damage too.
Really?
People started throwing seats.
God. I just wanted it to be more like a gig.
Yeah.
Sort of like what the real thing is.
Well, the funny thing is when we pulled up, there were the ambulances there just in case anyone OD or whatever, got too drunk or whatever.
You weren't even playing.
Yeah, I know. It was funny, but it was very interesting. I have a lot of it on videotape too.
Oh, cool.
And videotape. It's interesting. Should have been there, Dave.
I really wanted to be there. I really
very
wanted
interesting.
to be there.
And then afterwards, it's like, okay, so what do we do now?
Yeah, where do we go? What's to do?
Yeah.
Well, I'd had to take for a little while because I was doing the interviews. and stuff with it. So I listened to it on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
I just put on the Walkman on the beach, just like. Pretty hammering.
Yeah, I think it's one of our better achievements.
I think it's a great record.
Well, I think it's good because we took a lot of chances in it, and we took certain risks and chances on this album, and we went into a direction that right offhand we weren't exactly sure if our fans would go with.
Yeah.
And the fans have been there, and then they've accepted the changes we've chosen to make, and I think that's that's a big compliment.
Have you run into any, like, I don't know if you've run into many fans, like, sort of in the backstage?
Oh yeah, I've run into people who think that the album's crap.
Yeah, really.
But I think.
What do they say that's crap about?
Well, there isn't a fast song, but everyone expects us to play a fast song. Chances are, if someone expects us to do something, you won't do it.
Yeah.
It's like whenever our tour manager expects us to be in one spot at the same time, we won't do it because that's our personality. I think a lot of people come up to me and say, well, don't you think certain songs on the new album are a bit commercial? And it's like, look, all right, we didn't sit down and say, well, let's write a commercial song.
Yeah.
The songs that we wrote just turned out to have a bit more hooks and a bit more melody, than last time. It was what was written. It was how it came out. We didn't push it at all. We weren't going for any certain formulas or anything. We weren't going for any tried and true things. We were experimenting, and that's just what came out.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything written that was fast that we felt comfortable enough to put on the album either.
Yeah.
And it's a new direction, and if a lot of people say that it isn't heavy or anything like that, I can't get over people saying it isn't heavy. People who say it isn't heavy.
Have you actually had people come and say it's not heavy?
Yeah, it's just missed the point altogether. It's just gone over their heads.
What do you say to someone who walks up and says your album's not heavy?
I go, sure.
This has been like on the gigs and stuff?
Yeah, a lot of people, friends of mine, who are really, hardcore kind of fans, who said, well, the album isn't as heavy, you guys aren't as heavy as you used to be. And I go, look, man, you're trying to tell me something like Nothing Else Matters. Sad But True isn't heavy. Holier Than Thou isn't heavy.
Yeah.
Wherever I May Roam. And
how do you define heavy? If that
yeah. Come on. I think this album has all the basic Metallica elements and then some. I think we have more to offer on this album. So what if there isn't a fast song? There's enough different things on this album. There's enough different musical directions and ideas to make up for the lack of no fast song.
Yeah.
We cut our teeth in the beginning on the fact that we were a fast band. If someone who fucking, likes fucking porridge, I don't want to go into stupid analogies, but
okay, we'll strike that.
Yeah, but we cut our teeth on being a band that played fast, but we also didn't want to paint ourselves into a corner.
Yeah. Which is what most of your imitators have done.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of heavy metal bands and heavy metal, speed metal, thrash metal, whatever you want to fucking call it, nowadays is just so incestuous. I've said this in other interviews. People rip off the same old bands, These bands are ripping off the same old bands, and now they're becoming all related because they're all sounding the same, and they're not branching off in
I've actually stopped listening to a lot of it because
me too.
It's just boring.
Yeah, a lot of it is just the same. It has a lot of the same ideas, and it's all been done. A lot of the way these bands sound, and I mean, a lot of their ideas have just been done before. I mean, it just has slightly different packaging and slightly different, tone of voice. But and because of that, it's frustrating because something that you fathered, you want to see going in a positive direction, and when it just starts to get stale, it's just a sad thing. I don't know. I mean, that's all I have to say about current state of heavy metal affairs.
When I was on the European leg of the Justice tour, you were doing that thing with the kids after the shows, backstage with the tables and signing stuff. Were you able to do that in America when you were doing the arenas and all?
Mm-hmm. We'd go outside and sign stuff for them. There's a couple times it got a little out of hand, but we always still did that, and I just hope we still can. I really do, man. I mean, that.
Have you talked about trying to do it, or how you're going to do it?
No, it hasn't been discussed. I mean, but if it comes up, of course we're going to try to tackle it. We're not ones to bow to a challenge, that kind of a thing, and it probably will become a challenge.
It's going to be logistically.
It's going to be really, really a bitch. If kids, I don't know. We usually hang around for quite a while after the gigs, and then if there's still, sometimes even at the last gig, in America, the last gigs in America, there was still a couple or a few hundred kids have waited 3 hours after we're done playing, and they're still waiting. And that takes some time to take care of that and say hi to everybody and all that. But I don't know. I really feel that if we lose that, I'm not going to feel right about the whole thing. I really am not. I'm going to feel very, very uncomfortable about the whole thing if we turn our backs on that stuff. It's going to be, I think it'll be the death of us if we do, actually.
Because really those were the ones that were sort of like keeping it going all through the lean years, and like what you've got now is like all the peripheral people.
Yeah.
Well, there's that have sort of like made it number one.
There's so many new people that are being turned on to Metallica now, we can't even imagine it, I mean, things that have just happened in the last 6 weeks, MTV Awards and the album taken off and being played on radio where it was never ever played on radio before. And like hear Natalie Cole and any of those bands that have 3 letters for a name, OMD, EMF, whatever, and then Metallica back to back. You just, wow, it's kind of strange. And there's always the question about, the kids that are turned off now because we're not playing Kill 'Em All again 10 years later. I go, gotta get 220 beats every song and stuff. And that kind of, I don't know, it kind of bums me out because I would like to think that if they were our real fans from the beginning, that they would have grown with us instead of shunning us now.
Have you run into many of those personally?
Not many, but there are the few, and I'm sure there's a lot more that we don't see.
How do you sort of, when they say that, how do you respond to them? Like, have you actually had
my
dialogues with these people?
Mostly from interviewers like a fanzine that are speaking for the kids of that, that think like that. I always go back and refer to the live thing, since that's what I know about. We can play Whiplash, Fight Fire, anything as fast as anybody ever, and then play Nothing Else Matters with the same effectiveness and the same weight, and that's how I respond. I mean, Metallica doesn't have to prove anything to anyone as far as playing fast. So if they feel that we've let them down because we're not playing Kill 'Em All again, then I think that's kind of short, closed-minded on their part.
They're not really paying attention.
They should have, right? They should have. If they're our friends, then they should be with us all the way, and they should grow with our growth.
But when you came off the Justice tour, and I guess had your time off or whatever, and came back, did you actually sort of sit down and sort of say, well, this is what we should do, this is what we want to do? Was there actually sort of like a powwow thing, or was it?
It's kind of a happening. It's kind of a it's kind of a thing that happened. It was the same process, as always.
It seems like the sort of thing that you would actually talk about, as opposed to just sort of like, oh, well, it was.
I think that, James and Lars might tell you different, because I mean, they were they were the nucleus the whole time, like they always have been. The process was the same as far as I know, as far as everybody making their tapes at home and putting everything together and pick the best stuff. That's how it was again. But the way that we went about the simplicity of everything this time, just keeping everything to, like one or two riffs and just go it, right? And build something really strong and heavy around that instead of having a bunch of parts in one song and just making everybody all confused and shit. It was that kind of carried over, and that's the way that James was writing. And so that's kind of how the way the band went, because, that's just the way it is. James is what's happening, so. And we all just kind of added our little things as we went. And I mean, the way that I had to approach the bass this time, and the way that Lars approached his drums, and the musical thing was really much more focused, I think, than it's ever been before. We really had an idea. Whether we sat down and discussed it and said we're gonna do this, gonna do that, and like drew the lines, I don't think that was there. I think that it just kind of unspoken law that we knew what we had to achieve. It was quite a bit of time and quite a lot of experiences in between album to album in those 3 years. Played a lot of shows and learned a lot of things and listened to a lot of different music and brought on different influences and stuff like that. All those are factors,
The thing is, you really got away from the thing that you sort of created, that the band sort of created, which was that speed metal stuff.
I don't know.
Thrash, whatever it is, but it's, it seems like in a way you sort of like distanced yourself just from that one sort of rut to see what else you could do.
Okay. Yeah. I guess we have distanced ourselves a little bit, but I don't think we've changed as how we think and what we really are. I don't think that's, we've still, the core is still what Metallica has always been. It's just that we've kind of shown that we can, when we take chances like this and play some pretty nylon string song and James is actually singing and stuff like that, that we can do it, and we're not afraid to show that we can do it, and maybe not afraid to show a little vulnerability here and there, and that we, not just all the time, that there's more to us than that, as compared to.
Vulnerability is an interesting phrase, or word, because it is the word that anyone would least associate with a band like Metallica.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's like we just kind of kind of showed another side and showed that we're not so wimpy or weak that we're afraid of showing that. We still, we know our strength, right? I mean, some of the things that Nothing Else Matters, or The Unforgiven, when James gets down and actually, and sings real nice, and you just kind of go, ooh, and it's like nobody would ever expect that. All these people are talking before the album come out, or all of, oh, what are they gonna do? Or they sold out, or they're gonna wimp out, right? Fucking nobody had any idea. Nobody could predict, And then when the shit comes out, they just go, jeez, They couldn't predict what we were doing. I don't like to think that we've changed the core. That's really what my point I'm trying to make. We don't. I think that you'll probably see that when the live thing comes down, that when we still got. That's our strength. That's our strength, and that's.
I haven't seen you in 2 years,
right.
So I'm looking forward to Saturday.
It's still there, and if anything, we've become stronger in that vein. I think there is much more confidence as far as the unit thing. Everybody, like, this guy trusts these three guys, and so on. Everybody knows. It's really become. We've only played 16, 17 shows since we got back out of twiddling knobs for 9 months. As we were kind of shaking off the rust to begin with, but now that it's come around, I have a lot of confidence that we're definitely gonna be able to live up to what everybody's expecting of us. Definitely.
Do you have any idea how much it cost to make the record? 9 months in the studio is a long
Yeah, I know. How much should I tell you?
Of course, that's why I asked.
Oh, it was over a mil 2, I think.
Do you think that's sort of like a justified amount for a record?
I tell you.
I know it's sort of it's kind of apples and oranges, but
it is. But
people
you
think 9 months.
You listen to any one of the 12 songs on that record, or listen to 3 of them. And it's like the sound is so big and so right. I don't know. I think that it was worth it. I mean, we took Bob Rock for one thing. I don't know if we're going to talk about that now. He brought out things that Metallica we were kind of scared to ever do, or that we didn't even know that we had in us. He took time with. I don't know if I talked to you about this before a little bit, but when we sat down and went through X number of guitars and X number of amp combinations, configurations, every fucking possible equipment thing that anybody has to offer to find the sound that was right. Whether that took a week or 10 days or 2 weeks or whatever to find that sound, and then went with it. We knew what we wanted it to sound like. He was able to bring it to reality. He knew what to do here, what effects to use there, all that stuff. He had this vision that when he was in the rehearsal with us, September of '90, and he knew what the shit was going to sound like right now. With this raw crap, and James saying like his voice has been fucked for years, and everybody's kind of still trying to like figure out their parts, and I used to play this instrument, and stuff like that, and he knew what it was going to sound like when it came out. It was just amazing for the way that he put us at ease to really capture the performance thing. Really, especially with James, and I think it's very obvious. I mean, he made me feel real good. I can speak personally, and I think it comes out on the record. There's actually bass on a Metallica record finally, and that speaks for itself. But James also, the vocal thing, he was never that loose, and he was afraid to show what he was capable of. I'm repeating myself, but it's just
about the sort of like
James he impressed James with his know-how, and his just his ability and his vision, and his he just made him loose enough to kind of you scat a little bit and just kind of do whatever, feel real loose, and Bob just said, get it out, man, do whatever the fuck you want, and if we're not gonna, who cares, man, let's fucking do it, and all he would ever do before is vocal, double vocal, and the same thing, just this kind of mimeo the same over and over again. And this time he let soul out, his fucking soul and emotion and shit,
James is such a complex guy anyway, but there's a funny thing about him, not that I know him that well, but just from the time I've spent in doing this sort of thing, is that there's a part of him that's very strong-willed, very go for it, very intense, and yet there seems this other thing that's sort of sort of holds things back. There's only this one, the public thing or the visual thing that he lets out is the very forceful,
the
very
lion.
Intense, the lion. And yet there is this other thing which is just as strong, but it's not as sort of aggressive or combative. Or,
right. I know what you mean. Scary or
there's something.
Yeah, people are intimidating even because people are very intimidated by him a lot of times.
When I first met him, I was extremely intimidated. Yeah, because I didn't know where he was coming from.
Right.
Sort of
that's
almost like a protective device.
It is. It definitely is. And there's. Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. It's not like he'd tell you, or it's not like that he'd show it. I mean, it's one of those people, there's a few people that got this gift that whatever they do, it's like, shit. It's and then he's just one of them. He could pick up any instrument and just go, whatever, so it's...
But when you first auditioned, or when you first sort of got in, how did you relate to James? Did you feel comfortable with him initially, or... Because Lars seems to be the real open...
It was really, I tell you, man, it was really, now that I look back, it was really weird for the first 2, maybe even 3 years, because, it was, the situation that brought it all together to begin with was fucked. I mean, just not right, it's really wrong, really just not right. And it was very hard for these guys, and as far as anyone in the family, crew and that is concerned, but especially the guys in the band, to open up to someone else. To really take someone as a friend and trust and respect and things like this. Cliff really meant so much to them, and then being taken away like that, and they just shut up, man. They just fucking closed up, and they were scared for different reasons, like to open up somebody else for them to be taken away again, or to open up somebody else and then be
assume that will take the position.
Right, or if
place.
expectations are not met, and scared of that. And it was just really weird for the first bit, and so I tried to talk to him and to maybe impress him with different things, or do my best to just be the part. But after a while, I realized that just you be you and be proud of what you are and don't try to be somebody else. And these guys have all taught me that, and just the whole thing of being in this organization has taught me that. And now everybody sees it, and I'm not sure if they're real happy about that or whatever, but I am myself now. And I think they respect it in certain ways when I don't, when I'm just happen to be maybe the quiet guy in the corner and I don't really feel like going out and raging tonight or, go out and get fucked up or whatever. It's just kind of, maybe I'll just hang out and listen to some blues tunes and just, kind of hang or whatever, and now they respect me for that me and not just being a yes man, like, oh, go out and drink, does that mean I'm cool? Or whatever. Because that's how it was for the first bit.
But what was it like with James with that sort of yin-yang aspect of his personality, which is sort of like, again, sort of the intimidating, aggressive thing, not really showing these other aspects. How did you sort of cope with that initially? Because even Lars in his own way is sort of more open. It was hard to get close to him no matter who you were. Yeah.
Only over the past, I think, 2 years, maybe 18 months, he's started to break out of that shell and not afraid to show his real self also. He still is the intimidating person that he is. That is him. That is his real, and he's not afraid, to whatever.
Yeah.
But he also has just shown more strength in that he's not afraid to, maybe do something that might be wimpy, but if it's actually him, he's not kind of afraid to show those little things and start to open up a lot more and maybe.
But what would be an example of that, say, aside from singing and the music? It's only a cliche when, people sort of abuse it. And really what you've done is you did all this stuff the way you were going to do it, and a lot of the things that you did outside the industry you had to because no one would take you seriously enough. Right. And also the fact that a lot of the stuff like doing videos and whatever, probably in the position you were in 2 albums ago, you would have gotten stuck in with bozo directors who wanted to do dopey shit. And
right. No, don't
in a way, in a lot of ways, you stayed away from it out of necessity.
Oh yeah, but also out of, don't get me wrong, I'm like everything that we've done, maybe I don't like, everything that we've ever done as a band, I'll never ever second guess. I'll look back on it and say, we learned this and that from it, but it's like, I'm not gonna sit and fucking talk shit about because I know that we always did the right shit at the right time, and then you can sit back 7 years later and go, well, a song like Escape, okay, so, you fired a few blanks here and there, but, you fucking, you try, but, I just, there was a few years where we really had this really vicious, where you just really, it's like, you just saw what everybody else is doing and instantly you just went, fuck this, and well, everybody's going in this direction, so let's go over here. I don't think we necessarily...
Were you pissed off because people wouldn't take you seriously? That they didn't think you were capable of sort of like being on that level?
I think at one point, and I'm not really sure I can pinpoint when, but I think there was at one point where a combination of certain insecurities within, maybe feeling inadequate as musicians and or as songwriters and so on, and just, what we felt that the feedback we got from other people made us maybe go one step too far, around Puppets Justice in the direction of trying to prove ourselves. It's something that I can look back on now and just remember certain isolated incidents where you'd sit there and go, well, let's really prove,
let's do all this weird ass shit, sideways fucking stuff, and prove, how we really are capable musicians or songwriters or whatever. And
Yeah.
I think that a lot of that stuff came from just insecurities and stuff. But you gotta understand that with this band, there's so few things that we ever actually discuss in a sort of in just how like you sit down and talks things through.
Yeah.
Most things in this band always derive from subconscious things where you never actually sit down and say to somebody, me and James would never sit down and say, well, you look at this business, everybody's doing this, so let's go this in this other way. It was just like, I think we both felt it at the same time, but we never really like sat down and had a battle plan. We just kind of went that way.
But even when you would sit down, because since James and you pretty much write the material, wouldn't you sit down and say, we got to do something? People think we're just sort of a couple of fuckwits, and we're writing bozo songs.
No.
We'll show them what we can really do.
Absolutely not. That conversation has never come up.
Really?
Or if it had, I was too drunk to remember.
He was too drunk to be relevant.
Right, yeah. No, never. I think it's really weird. I sit here now and I look back on the progression of those three records, Lightning, Master, and Puppets, and I try and ask myself, what was it that was going on there? It's really interesting. I'm not sure I really have the answers, but I know that never went down. We never sat there and purposely said, oh, James, man, nobody's taking us seriously. Let's write the most intricate, progressive, sideways song that we can think of, and people at least think that we're fairly decent musicians.
Yeah.
I mean, that never came up. What I can
But
remember...
you did feel that way.
I think it might have been a little more on a maybe, at least for me, a little more on a personal level with me and my instrument. You gotta understand that when I formed this band with James, playing drums, being a drummer was just the ticket in.
Mm-hmm.
And the word drummer you should put in about 800 quotation marks, because it really was like a situation of, there I was, I just wanted to do this with other people, and it's like, for some reason, don't know why, it just ended up being that the drums were the vehicle.
Yeah.
But it was never like I studied, or it was never like I, just sat and actually played. It was like I got a drum kit, and literally 30 minutes later, I was on the phone trying to get somebody to come over and play guitar with me.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? I was like, okay, well, let's see, you do this. And I remember clearly that my dad, still to this day, gives me so much shit, because I remember one of the first days of having this fucking drum kit, my dad said, I said to my, something, I said, yeah, I gotta get a band, blah, 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 blah. And I said to my dad the immortal quote, I could learn this shit in 10 days, right? I have not lived that fucking down. So it's like, yeah, I can learn this shit in 10 days, no problem. You just cross your arms, and, about Christmas 80, 81, I finally realized this tennis thing, blah, blah, blah. So I get this drum kit, and it's like, okay, I can learn to do this shit in 10 days.
Yeah.
So, Metallica, we start playing blah, blah, blah. And if you hear some of the old demos, I mean, there's nothing there. So all of a sudden, I wake up one morning, a year or two later, and I go, wait a minute, I'm in a band, we're fucking making records, making an album, we're like touring America and Europe. It's like, I don't even know what I'm doing here. And it was like this big fucking wake-up call of life, do you know what I mean? And all of a sudden, I think I got in like a huge panic, and I started taking lessons, and I just went through a period of really being insecure about my abilities as a drummer. And at this time, Kirk, even though we never like sat and really talked about it, Kirk was also taking lessons and doing shit with Joe Satriani and all this stuff, which has been well documented. And it was just like, I think a few of us on our own, in our own free time, was just kind of like freaking out about how quick things happened for us.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It was never like, it was not like we had like 5 years of fucking paying our dues on club circuits and bar shit. And it was like, there we were fucking playing cover songs, writing our own songs. All of a sudden we were touring up and down the East Coast, touring all over America, going to Europe, making a record. It was like, we were like 19. We were just thrown in at the deep end, and it was like, so I went through a couple of years of really, I just remember really sitting with the songs and really trying to, okay, where can I throw in some drum fills that would really blow everybody away, and really sitting. Now I look back on it and say really forcing it. You know what I mean? I really, you know, I got to do some shit here that's going to be cool. So really forcing stuff to, you know, and, you know, maybe sometimes directing the songs or sort of pulling the songs in a direction where I could, you know, shine a little more or whatever. And, you know, that was like sort of the mid 80s. And it's just like, now all that's completely out of my system. You know, I mean, I think the final shit of that came out on Justice, and it's
well,
like...
it's interesting you mention it, because I think, I'm going to ask James, but it seems like for him it's almost been kind of like opposite, because he hasn't really sort of loosened up and sort of opened up more, you know, with his singing and whatever point, until now.
Yeah, it's a very good
point. With his lyrics and everything else. So it's on, you know, his was even more delayed.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. I think, you know, for me, you know, I mean, we talked about this a little last time, but just about how I just wanted to play drums. I you know, this time around I just wanted to play drums in more the classical sense of how you expect a drummer just to sit back there and get the shit fucking going. I'd never really tried that, and I don't know, just had a huge desire to sort of shift things in that direction. And because I probably, you know, I felt that, you know, the last straw of my insecurities and so on was Justice. And when I listen to Justice now, I mean, some of the things on the drum kit are fucking wild. I mean, they are. I mean, they really, a couple of weeks ago I sat, there was some things I was doing in a couple of songs that really blew my mind. It really did. It was really weird. It was like, fucking hell.
Surprised by yourself.
Yeah, but, you know, just because I've been in my frame of mind for the last year has been, you know, this big sign's been hanging in front of me saying simplicity, you know, lay back, you know, do less than more. That's been hanging here, and it's all of a sudden, you know, you listen to Justice and you go, fucking hell, that's just taking things as far as I could the other direction. So it's kind of funny. I mean, whatever.
Well, did you notice that was there any sense that James was going to sort of go through his change now? Did you get any sense of that either when you were working with the riff tapes or even before that? Because I remember you mentioned that Nothing Else Matters was one of the earlier songs you brought along, right?
Yeah, I mean, Nothing Else Matters was... Nothing Else Matters was like the first... It was the first thing I really jumped on when you know, we did about a month of dates in Europe in May of last year, just to kind of regroup in every sense of that word after taking like 8 months off. And on the last day, we all went in 4 different directions for a week. And on that last gig, James, Kirk, and Jason all gave me tapes of their main ideas. And I sort of went away and, you know, listened to James stuff, everybody. And like, the first thing that just jumped at me out of this fucking tape was this Nothing Else Matters, because that was, a lot of the other things of James's were just like bare riffs, but the Nothing Else Matters thing, that was like verses and like lyrics and stuff, and it was just like, fuck. I mean, it just hit me, but did it...
Was it in that same sort of style of being kind of like a...
Yeah, I mean, the demo is pretty close to, you know, I mean, we threw a chorus in. I suggested, you know, let's try and put a chorus in and this, that, and the other. But, you know, if you ask me, did it surprise me? No, I can't really say it surprised me, because, I don't know, with James, I don't know, it's just really weird. Nothing really that he does surprises me. Sometimes I'll like go, whoa. But, you know, in terms of really sitting there flabbergasted and going, wow, where the fuck does this come from? Because I think a lot of people, just because of who he is as a person, you know, because he's so, you know, he keeps everything, you know, so guarded inside, you know, and it's just like, I know a lot of that shit lingers in there, and I just know that it's a question of whenever he feels right about fucking emitting it, you know? And it's just like, so I think the feeling of when I heard Nothing Else Matters on that tape was more one of like positive, fuck yeah, this is fucking great. You know,
Yeah.
let's fucking, I want to make this into the fucking, you know, let's make this into a great fucking song, more so than where the fuck did this come from?
Yeah.
But sure, if I take a step back and look at it maybe like the way you are, I mean what you just said, I think it's a valid point. But I think that, you know, it's a combination. I think there's one factor that we really, you know, it's a combination of James probably feeling that now was the time to let all this shit out.
Yeah.
But I really think that Bob Rock really fucking was vital in really pulling a lot of that shit out of him. I really think that the combination, I'm not sure it was 50-50 or 60-40 or whatever, but the combination of James probably being ready to spill it out on the table, and then Bob Rock, I knew, because Bob Rock told me, you know, one of the earliest times I remember we went out to dinner, just me and Bob, and he just said he knew that one of the things that he really, in due time on the record, that he really knew that in James was this great fucking singer lingering that just had never fucking shown his colors yet, you know, in what was really in there. And Bob just told me that one of his biggest hard-ons and what he was looking forward to do was just getting in there and fucking, you know, getting this shit out in the open, you know.
But the thing is, James had already written that song before Bob Rock came into the picture, so there was
We'd written,
obviously
we'd
something
written,
going on.
Yeah. We'd written all the songs before Bob Rock showed up, sure. But, you know, like I'm saying, you know, us writing the songs and going in this direction, but like I was just saying, you know, and the way the performances came out, I'm not saying that Bob Rock is responsible for the maybe the creative side of some of the songwriting stuff, but in a situation, I mean, you can't say Nothing Else Matters. You can say Nothing Else Matters and look at the lyrics and listen to the song, but at one point or another, you also have to pay attention to the performance.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the performance itself, to me, and just the way that we as a band are able to do this, and James is able to sing this with this kind of emotion and stuff, says just as much to me as the song itself does.
Yeah. I guess
You know
the
what I
thing
mean?
I'm sort of getting is that, you know, the fact that you know, James being, you know, the very sort of strong-willed and very, you know, solid personality is that there had to be some willingness to be drawn out. If you don't want to be drawn out, you know, the best producer in the world isn't going to make a
That's what I'm
difference.
saying. That he was ready to lay it on the table.
Yeah. Well, why do you think he was ready?
I think
You know,
I really.
After all this
No,
time?
I really. I mean, this question keeps popping up and up again. I'm finally feeling comfortable about. You know, it's so you know, everything in rock and roll, it's always about that you're never supposed to talk about growing older, because that always stands for everything that rock and roll is supposed to be against, you know. And it's just like, but I finally feel completely at ease about just saying, you know, it's like you can ask me 10 questions about things that have happened in the last year, and 9 of them, sooner or later, I can answer with the fact of, it's just down to the fact that we're growing older. And it's like, a little while ago, right when I started realizing that, I was going, well, gee, that's kind of scary, isn't it? And then all of a sudden it's like, well, wait a minute, that's just the fucking truth. And it's just, but like I said, everybody has this fear of talking about the fact that you grow older. And I just, you know, a lot of things I can find in my mind about understanding things better, you know, the bigger picture, and then resources you take from that and attribute to the creative side of writing and to the mechanical way of making records and all that. It's just, sooner or later, it all falls back on the fact that you're more open-minded, you get certain emotions and certain things that I think are attributed to the fact of just growing older and feeling ready to just, I don't know, just dabble in some of this. Do you know what I mean? It's,
well, I guess the thing that the position that makes it interesting for James, I guess, is the fact that by being the singer and the lyricist, you know, like when he does that, it's more on display. When you and Kirk and Jason do it, you know, granted it's all part of the process, but it's
right, of
what
course,
people hear is primarily instrumental. It's
yeah.
primarily in the performance. He's actually sort of laying something out
Of
that's
course,
a lot more literal and a lot more personal. It's, he's not just wailing about the environment and bad government and war and stuff. He's talking about a lot of other stuff. He's being more vulnerable. And that's not the sort of word people use with him.
That's very true. But I think, obviously, if we, looking back on the whole last year, obviously, if we wanted to play it safe, we made like 94,000 mistakes in the last year. Do you know what I mean? If that was the case.
Yeah.
So, I really think that we all went into this year, which for at least me and James started in June of last year, with just this idea of really just, let's just try and just, let's just try and open up, and let's try and again, this is not something that was talked about, but there's all these, I think in Metallica, there's all these unspoken things, we know each other very well, and between me and James, we fucking been together every day for 10 fucking years. It's you just know, you just know I don't know, it's just weird. It might be really difficult for somebody outside of this thing to understand or whatever, but I believe we have this kind of thing where you just know it's time to, do you know what I mean? We never sat down and laid a battle plan for this year. We just, the conversation, like I can't remember if I told you last time, was just, let's write some shorter songs. Okay, the whole conversation took literally like 30 seconds. One night in a bar around the corner from my house, and that was it. There we were. Okay, now we knew what was in front of us for the next year, and coupled with the thing with Bob Rock and letting somebody else in. Because we really are. It's really become apparent. I never wanted to admit this to myself, but we really are stubborn motherfuckers, and we really are.
Well, actually, the other cliche question that I thought I'd start with, of course, is like this whole #1 business. Because I'm just sort of wondering, how has it sunk in at all?
Well, I think management makes sure that we're not in the States when the album comes out. Kind of keep the swelling down a little, I think, especially for certain other people in the band. But I don't know. When we get back home, we'll kind of see how things are like developing while we're away.
But when you first heard about it, how did it register? I assume, Lars said that they basically just like sent a fax. I guess you were in Budapest or something.
Oh yeah. Well, it was sure we went out and had a drink, but we do anyway. So we just had something else to talk about, But yeah, everyone was, I guess, kind of expecting it to hit that anyway with the new way that thing works with billboards. So.
But there's also like a certain enormity that comes with that it's sort of beyond just like it's beyond like having a record that sells a lot and people buy it and da-da-da-da. It's like that number means something else.
Well, I'm trying to go higher than that, 0. But it was cool that it hung out for like I think it was 4 weeks or something.
Yeah.
That meant more to me than actually hitting #1, but staying there for at least 4 weeks, and then of course Garth kicked our ass. So.
Guy comes up with his big black
good old
hat.
boy kicked us out of there. But I think it kind of hit me when we did the MTV thing, when after we played it and we went to this press tent thing, and I didn't know what to expect. I guess Lars had been there earlier in the day.
Yeah.
We just got off. We're all kind of hepped up. It was really weird just going on and playing one song because after the song, it's like, okay, now we're warmed up.
Let's go.
Let's play another one quick. For the commercial or whatever. And but we went into the press tent and the Electra lady said, oh, should I say #1 and all this shit? And I was like, oh, fuck, I don't give a shit. #1 band, Metallica, blah. Walk in, it's like, poof, 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 all these fucking photos. Probably the first, 25 looked pretty funny. Everyone's like, And
their goofy faces and shit.
oh yeah, it's like what the fuck, you know, all in a row. And it was kind of, I don't know, it was like feeling Madonna for 1 second, like what she has to put up with.
Yeah.
But you know, going into the other tents, you know, doing CNN, doing all this wild shit, you know, and we're getting to cover Rolling Stone this time, you know. So hey, you know, some pretty cool things are happening.
Yeah. Well, it's just, I guess the thing is that, you know, when people start bands, it's sort of like they always start, you know, they start for a lot of different reasons, but there's always that sort of thing that, you know, maybe someday I'm going to be up where all, you know, the people I dig are, where Zeppelin was and where Sabbath was and blah, blah, blah. Did you actually, did you ever have any, was that part of like your dream to actually be there? Was that,
Oh yeah.
was that part of the goal?
What, you mean being number one? Or
Well,
whatever? I never
I
paid
don't mean
any
it to be, it's kind of cliched, but you know, that kind of, it sort of measures something. It's not even just that, you know, it's number one and it's an ego thing, but there's a certain thing that it measures
like,
that you've achieved.
yeah,
something.
when someone says Led Zeppelin, people know what it is.
Yeah.
And you know, if someone says Metallica, hopefully they'll know what that is. That's kind of the goal, I think.
Yeah.
But when, you know, younger, that was, well, of course, that was a thing. You know, you'd see the Zeppelin poster, and go, that's me in 10 years, you know, and my brothers are laughing at me going, fuck off, you know. And when I was younger, that was it. But as the band started going, we didn't really, oh, we got to be number one or else, you know. It just, I mean, it's, the way it happened is, I think, the best way it could.
Yeah.
We weren't really striving for it.
Yeah.
And we worked hard, you know.
I guess actually the other thing that's sort of weird is that, you know, when you started, you were sort of starting in reaction to a lot of the stuff that was part of that race for the top, and that, you know, you all want to be big and, you know, make number one records, and therefore you got to do this mainstream business. And you were like, sort of like, well, we don't want it. We're not selling out. We're not even buying in. We don't want to know. We've got this other thing.
Right. That is kind of ironic, you know, in a way.
Yeah.
That we basically wanted to crush all that shit, and we hated it, and you know, we didn't care if we were any part of it or, you know, radio or any of that shit. And just the way people are going about promoting this album and shit, and I would have to say the album is a lot easier to listen to for some people that haven't heard Metallica before, you know, compared to the other albums. It's a little easier for, you know, simpler kind of minds to understand the songs, you know what I mean? I mean, the songs are simple, so it makes sense, you know? But yeah, I mean, things came to us instead of, you know, us chasing after something.
Well, I think that's sort of actually that's probably the sweetest thing about it is
no
that
doubt.
you didn't do anything out of the ordinary.
Not we wouldn't want to do.
Yeah, or that you wouldn't have done on your own anyway, no matter what the reward of the result.
It all comes down to, like, if you're 100% into what you're doing, it can't be wrong anyway, you know.
Yeah.
If people like it or don't like it, fuck it.
Well, did you feel pretty confident about it as you were making, like, this, the record is quite, I talked about this on the phone with you, I guess, before, about how, you know, even though it's very much what you do, there is a lot of different stuff about it. You know, it is not Justice Part 2, it's not
Thank God.
or like, you know, it's definitely on a different, you definitely took a different road. Was that, how conscious were you? Did you feel that, well, obviously the Justice thing was played out.
A lot of the riffs were from the Justice tour.
Really?
Oh yeah. A lot of titles were before, you know, Puppets, you know, around the Lightning days and stuff. I mean, titles. I mean, that has nothing to do with the lyrical content or the vocal pattern or anything.
Like which ones? Just out of curiosity.
Enter Sandman. That title's been around for a long time.
Really?
No one liked it. They hated it. What the hell's that mean? You know, I go, I don't know.
It just sounds
Sandman.
good.
It just, it had a weird thing to it. And this time I found something to match up with it. And What else? Other riffs. Oh my god. What other songs we got on there? I think the Rome riff's been around for a while. Sad but True was...
that track sounds like it could have been on Kill 'Em All, really, because it's got that slow, solid Sabbath trip about it.
Oh, when we were doing the Stone Cold Crazy thing, we were jamming on that at that point. But we were conscious that we wanted to make some shorter songs, and like I'm sure Lars said, we always wanted to kind of do shorter songs especially after the tour. We were playing for fucking so long, and the songs were long, and it was like, okay. We wanted some shorter tunes just to bash out. And Kill 'Em All had some shorter songs, and when we play them live, it's like, wow. I like playing that song.
So like
I don't get bored with it
Justice
myself.
And doing, Seek and Destroy or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I love playing the long, epic-y stuff.
Yeah.
There's a place for them. On vinyl, it's fine. You can, take the song off if you're tired of it. But live, it's like, okay.
Just hit the reprogram button on the CD player or something.
Yeah. But I don't know. I really like how the new album. I mean, I like all songs on there. I would have no problem playing any of those live at all. Might have to do some, figure out some extra vocal things for Jason and Kirk. But that's what's fun. That's what the challenge is. And of course, we don't want to reproduce them exactly like they are on the album. That's pretty damn boring.
Yeah. Well, when you said that the riffs, some of the riffs are old, were you writing those riffs almost in reaction to what you were playing every night?
That could be. But I mean, writing a short song has nothing to do with the riff, really. That's just up to construction.
Yeah.
And when Lars and I go in and fiddle with the stuff, trying to put the different riffs together. The riffs are a little more simple, I think, than what we got into, at least on Justice. More open chord kind of stuff here and there. It's a lot more challenging, as a vocalist to try and fill up these big holes too.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that's kind of interesting about having simpler, as in not as many riffs per song, is that it means that you're really risking a lot on one or two things. When you listen to something like Blackened or Justice or any of the stuff on that album, you can be impressed by how much is there, even if you don't necessarily go crazy over specific things. It's sort of like this whole package that goes whizzing by, and it's really impressive. Wow, they do all this. Whereas if you pick that one riff, you're sort of risking that that this is going to be solid.
Yeah.
How did you then decide which ones we're going to cook?
You just know. I mean, when you're, especially when I'm sitting there trying to fiddle with a riff, I know when I ain't going anywhere, or if I have something. And shit, we have 8 riff tapes each. We gotta sit down there and go through them. I mean, Kirk has about 8 riff tapes, but they're all 3 riffs. He keeps playing the same one over and over, and I was like, we get the idea, Kirk.
Trying to sneak it past it.
Yeah. It's like, gee, that sounds familiar. Yeah, that was on the last tape too. See, it's catchy, But I don't know. That was. I mean, people think it's a lot safer, like this album was really safe in this, but it's definitely not, because we're, like you were saying, we're risking it all on, one or two riffs,
Instead of the sort of superficial, impressive,
Yeah, I mean,
we're real
challenge
hot jazz guys or some shit.
The challenge for the kid is to try and remember what part's next, or some shit like that. Some bands get pretty far out there, and I can't even figure this shit out nowadays.
But when you were actually sitting down with the tapes, when you were actually constructing, what was going to be the songs, how did you sort of decide which riffs we're gonna make and which riffs were worthy of like really concentrating on, which would be sort of like maybe a bridge. Because you've got some changes, but by sort of narrowing what you were going to work with, you really, when you decided it was going to be like, we're going to play all our cards with this. Like, are there particular songs that would be examples of how you made those decisions? Not to be too sort of scientific about it, but.
I don't know, like I was saying, kind of what's a good bridge riff and what's like a meaty, like a main kind of riff.
I guess for example, Rome, like, because that goes actually through a couple of changes too.
It's pretty much based around the same thing. I mean, the main riff, is the same as the intro, except done, lighter, and I would like a beer, please. Carlsberg.
Okay, but first of all, I can't serve you dressed as well. I can't serve you on dress.
Well, we're doing an interview right now.
In the bar, dressed like
We can't do it.
it's club rules. So.
You got a tie I can put on?
A t-shirt.
Sure. Is that wrong?
Stranger things have happened.
Two times.
Dick. Who books us in these joints? But a tie with a t-shirt? Fucking fashion police will come in here and arrest us.
I think this is a great idea. I think we should really just.
Oh yeah.
One beer.
Sure. Yeah.
Orange juice.
Oh right.
The
Pink.
ginger ale. I'll try it. This is pretty nice.
All right. Oh, that's not right. No, I like the pink one.
You like the pink one?
How do you do this, man? You better.
Do you know how to follow me?
Okay.
That's sort of like a Jacob Marley thing. You put it in your head, Charles Dickens, right?
Okay, I think I know how to do this thing.
Okay, put the fat end
Over.
over that.
Alright.
The actual, yeah. Well, no, put it around the other way.
Huh?
Yeah. I'm sort of doing this mirror image-wise, but okay. Take the fat end, put it over the skinny end, swing it around.
Hmm?
Swing it under. Okay. Now, put it like that.
Okay.
And then through.
Hey, we're
And
learning.
down in the front bit. Like that.
Nice
Just
curvy
down
one.
through the front bit. And then just leave it like that.
Dig it, man. Now we're happening.
Oh, where's the
Now we
photographer when you.
Hey, that's not right. Okay, here we go. All right.
Now we're smoking.
Now we're styling. Look at that. Okay. What were we saying?
We were talking about Rome. You said that there's the basic riff, and then there's like another part that's kind of like
Yeah.
little
Well, Sandman's kind of the same thing too. Going lean in it. I mean, that builds up, and that's the main riff, and that's actually the B part also. And the chorus is just open chords from the same kind of modulation. So I mean, Sandman's like the most simplest song we've ever written, I think. Next to, yeah, that's got to be it. What was it? What were we talking about? Oh, how do we put riffs together?
I know how you put riffs together, but I think that obviously there was a severe editing process this time.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of. If I was Kirk or Jason, I'd kind of freak. I think I'd want to be there the whole time. Why aren't you using my riff? And
Yeah.
But they, as much as we tell them, they might not understand that we just, we don't look to who wrote what. I mean, it's what's best for the project and the band, and it's always been like that. When you put on a tape, that's a great riff. We'll use it, Whose is it? Who cares?
Yeah.
It's not up to. And people were saying, okay, why isn't there a fast song? Why isn't there an instrumental? It's like, well, what do you mean? Well, because we did it on the other albums, we're supposed to still do that shit, There's no really thrash song on the albums. Like, well, we didn't really have any great fast riffs. The other riffs that we had on the album we thought were better,
Yeah.
slow or fast, whatever they are. And there were a lot of good riffs. That's why we ended up, I guess, with 12 songs on there.
Yeah.
It was pretty strange.
It's almost like you had better riffs because they were good enough to hold their own.
Right.
You just string them together like,
Right, exactly.
like a string of pearls or something.
Exactly. That's a good point. I mean, probably if, Justice or any of the other albums, we could have made, 12 songs out of all those riffs, but, just spread them out a little more. But, but when we got down to like 10 songs, it's like, okay, we got 10 riffs. Okay, that's good enough. It's good enough. And we go, oh, but this riff's really good. Let's write another one. It's like, oh shit, I'm sitting lyrically going, oh fuck, I can write 12 songs now.
So more work for you.
Well, we don't have the token instrumentals,
Yeah.
my night off, right there.
Well, we talked a bit about the Bob Rock thing before, but the one thing that actually Lars mentioned was that he felt that in a way, working with Bob really sort of freed you up a lot, that you really felt that he encouraged you to be a lot more open and a lot more, not just, I guess, in chords, but in singing, and I don't know how much that has to do with, the lyric and all, but certainly the way you express them is a lot more. I don't know. The thing that I keep thinking about is there's a certain vulnerability that I really like about it, because you have sort of a reputation for being very sort of,
Yeah, stubborn.
Well, I think stubborn. There's a certain sort of hardness that people sort of associate with you, which I think is part stage presence and part, the sound and certainly if you put you and Lars together. The difference in personalities is pretty drastic as well.
Well, having someone like Bob say, that's really cool. When you're not too sure about it, you want to try something like that. But when you don't have someone outside the band going, that's really cool, maybe we could do this. And, a lot of people thought, working with Bob are they going to be really safe and nice and the songs are going to be nice? It's like, well, shit, we've gotten more wild on this album than any of the other albums as far as experimenting with different things, There's loads of, the orchestra, the singing on certain songs. And
now, you said there were like some cellos or something on Unforgiven? Is there on Unforgiven?
Yeah, there's a couple on Unforgiven, but mainly Nothing Else Matters, the huge orchestra thing.
So is that actually a real orchestra?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. They like our ties. Yeah, orchestra. Oh, but mainly some of the singing stuff. Just going in and, we had the songs pretty well rehearsed when we went in a couple months before. Bob came to production rehearsal, I guess what you want to call it, and we sat in a little room and he sat down, and heard him, and he's got a feel.
Get to work with.
Yeah, here it is. Right. But he, it was good that he got to know the songs before we went in and all this. And at the start, it was like, wow, Bob Rock. We fiddled with some sounds and got some pretty good stuff, going on the tape. It was not like, oh, we'll save it in the mix kind of stuff. It was like, this is really good on the tape now, so we don't have to fuck with it later. And, we were kind of going, well, what the fuck, what's the big deal about Bob Rock? Why is he so good? I don't know really what's going on right now. But towards the end, when we started embellishing the songs, adding things, and that's when he started to really shine through. And it's like, fuck, this guy's good, And he is a guitar player, so it was extra kind of fun for me to experiment with things and with vocals. We'd go through the song a few times, warm up and this and that, and we'd lay a couple down, and I'd never recorded vocals this way, and it's, I guess, how everyone else kind of does it. They have, here's like 8-10 tracks or whatever, fill them up, just run through the whole song, and there's a lot more personality in it that way instead of, do a couple lines, stop, oh, I screwed this word up, punch in here. And instead of one master track, going and getting it just perfect, and then going back and doubling the vocals, which is what I'd always done before, and which I didn't do on this album.
What was it with the doubling then?
Alright, so...
Alright. Well, this is
Okay,
primary.
Bob's great. Everything's working out great. We don't know what the new album's called. And
Primary
we don't know who the support act is.
Primary question number one. You're going for a much more liver sounding thing, a much rawer, etc. Yet once again, you're on record time for like months spent doing the project. How does it end up becoming such a long process?
I don't know. I guess I usually just answer, we're Metallica.
Right.
And everything we do takes a long time going to the fucking bathroom. But, I don't know. To be totally honest with you, it's actually really caught me by surprise, too, because in theory, when we were sitting there and preparing for the record, because we wanted to go for a looser kind of a thing, most other bands would be able to go in and cut a looser record in shorter time than they would be able to go in and cut a tighter record.
Right.
But for us, I guess it's the opposite. I guess that we're all so opposite of everybody else. But
Is it nerves
I think
because the procedure is so? Is
no, I
different
think
this time?
it's a combination of. I really, I just can't answer it. Stefan, this is the one reason why it's just a combination of probably about like 10 little things. I could give you a couple of examples. First of all, we've definitely been a lot more concerned with the sounds that are going on tape than we probably ever have before. We used to, in the past, be very specific about the performances and about that whole side of it, but I guess we really felt that making, the record that we set out to and the vision that we had, which, basically, started with bringing in Bob and trying to, make a really, just a record with a lot of fidelity, just, a lot of lows, just a great sounding record, it's, I think, if you sit there and go, what's great sounding records of like the last 10 years, there's, remember when when Pyromania came out, everybody sat there and went, this is a great sounding record, because it was like a step above.
Right, it was different, it was a step forward.
And it's like, I think Motley Crue made a great sounding record with Dr. Feelgood, no matter what you think of the material, and I just think that, I don't think we've ever felt that any of our records have been great sounding. I think that the closest we came to it was with Ride the Lightning in terms of where we were before and then where we went, for Kill 'Em All. When we made Ride the Lightning, we goes, this is a great sounding record for 1984, with whatever limited amount of technology or whatever that we had at our disposal and what we had up in our minds. But, so basically getting back to the point, a lot of time spent on fucking with sounds. We spent, probably about a week, probably about 10 days to 2 weeks when we started out. Just, changing shit around in the room and stuff like that, making the room livelier and stuff like that.
Carpentry and all that business.
Yeah,
a
couple of weeks, guitar sounds, that kind of thing. So that's definitely one thing. We're a lot more particular about that and really making sure that it is livelier and that we can fit the bass in and that we can't have the record, with a low end of life and stuff like that. Another thing is, in terms of the performances, it's taking about the same time that I think it's, that it's done before. I think, for instance, with the drum tracks,
I did want to get into specifics of that. 5 months is a long time to spend. It really is a long time to spend, like, preparing for it, doing them, feeling comfortable about them, getting right. Do you admit that with you there's always a very large amount of nerves and trepidation and not really fully knowing if it's the right thing, but convincing yourself that this is what you're going to do anyway and having doubts?
Well, the way we went about it was that, we basically took the last 3 records were all recorded pretty much identical, and which were, every band member by himself, note perfect, click tracks, blah, 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 blah. So, all right, Bob, how do we get that power across that we have on stage? How do we get that power across on a record? Well, you start by, first of all, that it is actually possible to have all four of you guys play at the same time in the studio, which I guess we didn't know since we never actually tried it before. And so we actually set up the drum kit, and then the other three guys were playing around me. I think what Bob was great at in terms of the drums, and I think what he's which is sort of transcending through what everybody else is doing too, was to get everybody to loosen up in the studio, which I think we've always been kind of a little nervous about being in the studio, and I think that when I hear the stuff now from the early days, you can kind of hear that tentativeness, or that, I don't know, it just never sounded like we were comfortable in the studio, and I think that finally Bob, got us to loosen up to the point of being comfortable. But how do you do that?
Did that take 5 months?
Well, how do you do that? Well, I mean, you can't sit there and say, I mean, we did drum tracks from when we started till, months ago, but we also did two months of guitars in those 5 months, and we did, a lot of, he's been singing, since before Christmas, and so it's like, you don't sit there and go, this is what this instrument took, and you don't break it down to that, because it doesn't need to. We always recorded things. Most people go in and do, all the drums done, all the bass done, all the guitars done. We did a couple weeks of drums, then James would do a couple weeks of guitars, then we'd do a couple weeks of drums, blah, blah, blah. But I guess what I'm trying to get at is that loosening up to the point of where it sounded good required that we would play the songs so many times to get mentally away from the fact that we were in a recording studio. And basically, it's like if you go in there and say, okay, let's start the session, okay, and here, record. Okay, so it's like, then you're all tense and okay.
What happened to the plan initially you had of doing a small tour? Yeah,
okay. Finish this
segment.
Point, yeah, because it's very important. So it's like, in order to loosen up to the point of it sounding like we're comfortable, it would take, probably about 20 or 25 run-throughs of the songs where it would would really start cooking. Some bands can go in and start cooking after 2 or 3 takes, but it was to get so into it where it becomes a total physical kind of thing where you mentally, you don't sit there and think about it, but you mentally just remove yourself from the studio and transform the studio into an arena or whatever. It's that just took a lot of time to get that comfortable with each song. And then what we would do, which was a different process, instead of going for one perfect take like we'd always done before and building one perfect take like we'd always done before, basically it's in order for Bob to get us to loosen up to the point where it sounded comfortable, it's you would always play and never think that the one you were playing was the one that's going on the record. So it's you'd sit there and just go, play the song 30 times. There you go. All day, just play the same song 30 times. And you sort of loosen up. For some other bands, it doesn't work that way, because after they've played the song, 10 times, they become really bored.
Shitless, right?
Or, stagnant or whatever. But for us, that was kind of the best way with it. And so what happens is that you sit there and all of a sudden you have 25 takes of a song, and you gotta sit and listen through all that and deal with 25 takes of a song. And that all of a sudden became a very time-consuming thing. In terms of a drum track, we get do a drum track every other day or every 2-3 days. This is pretty normal for what we've always done. But all of a sudden it was instead of here's one perfect master like we'd always done before, here's 30 takes of this fucking song. Which one do we use? And then this process started, which we call the editing process, which is me and Bob will basically sit and shift through 30 takes of a song and sit there and go, well, gee, where does it cook the most? Where does it got the most, fire in the playing and stuff like that? Where does it sound the most relaxed? And then you'd sit and realize after a while, which obviously we got we smoothed out the editing process over the course of 12 songs, but it's like you realize that there might be, a great 2 minutes in one where it's like really on fire, and then a great 2 minutes like in another take and stuff like that, and then you sit there and piece them together, but the actual labor of sitting and dealing with all that, just a very, very time-consuming way of doing it. But the bottom line is that the end result, so you sit there and go, and some of the songs, it took 4 or 5 days per song just to shift through all the fucking stuff. We had like 180 reels of tape out there because we recorded this every time that we were playing in the studio. We recorded it. It was not like, we'd do like 20 warm-up runs and then start recording.
Right.
We recorded every one in case something. So we had like 180 reels of 2-inch tape out there, which is like our assistant engineer said that as far as he knew, that was like the most that any band had ever used. I'm not saying this to be proud of it. I'm just saying it like as a fact. And it's like, so just, it became a very time-consuming process.
Right,
in
right.
some cases, it would take 3, 4, 5 days per song. But the bottom line is that that's what it took for us to get away from the very sterile, very mechanical way that we had recorded records before, and to go for that loose kind of thing. That's what it took. And I'm not saying that it's the best way, and making records for us, I don't think it's never really an enjoyable experience, but it's like that's what it took for us to get to where we are now in terms of being loose and being happy about it. And so, what can you say?
What happened to the plan to play live and do a small like tour club thing of California or whatever before you went in the studio to play your songs? Did it just not
first of all,
happen
that was
like
never
that?
a plan, and that was something that we'd thrown around a couple of times. But I think that
Do you think that
it came up once or twice, and I think that for James to go out, we worked very closely with the vocal melodies, much more so this time around than we ever had in the songwriting process before. But never. James has never forced lyrics or forced anything like that. And, for us to go out and play, here's, an hour and a half, and here's, 12 new songs where James sits there and goes, and that. That's like all the lyrics. I don't think he would be comfortable with that. And I just think that it was like, I don't know, it just seemed like, let's just get fucking on with it. This time, we went one step further and did, 2.5, 3 weeks of something that we've never done before, which is pre-production. We just basically sat there and played the songs, with Bob and stuff like that, and threw ideas at each other and stuff like that. So who knows, maybe one day we'll get to do all the things that we set out to do. But I mean, at least this time we did a pre-production thing, which we've never tried before.
Talking about themes, I mean, you started off obviously thematically. You had very, like rebellious young metal stuff, and then you went through your fascination with death and the darker period, and then you kind of ended up, you went through getting into more commentaries and talking about how things are and where things are at. And with this record, there's a few songs that are probably vaguer in their like overall like directed commentaries than anything you've written.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that also come with age? I mean, I'm not talking about mellowing and like, in 2 albums time you'll be singing about the trees and the flowers and how wonderful it is and how, but I mean, do you see it as part of the growing up process and the evolution that now you're content to maybe sit back and write about things in a lighter, mellower way, and in a less direct, hard steam hammer sort of fashion?
Well, first of all, I
and
disagree
throw
with
some
you a little
song
bit
titles
because
in.
I don't think that the way Hetfield has written lyrics on the last 3 albums have ever been in a very direct way. I think it's always been, some of the subjects might be pretty direct or pretty...
Very direct. I mean, the whole "and justice for all" theme was very strong. Master of Puppets,
but I don't think the way the songs were written and the way the lyrics were put together was very direct, because I think...
No, but you knew where they were going.
Yeah, I think there was still room enough for the listener to interpret a lot of this stuff in whatever way the listener felt comfortable doing that.
But okay, let me throw in, because I have to make this point. But I mean, we can't talk about any of this, fair enough, But I mean, basically, you and I both know there is not going to be a strong, huge visual hook and a strong, huge, like, this, pointer as to the way things, what I'm driving at. So.
Well, see, the thing is that the 4 records before have all been pretty. There's always been some sort of underlying theme, recurring theme been running through most of the songs on each album.
Concept.
And this time around, there's 12 songs. All 12 songs have singing and lyrics. Before we've had 8 songs on the records. One's always been an instrumental, so it's like this time around it's just shit. It's sparser, it's looser, it's not really as connected.
Is it more mature? Is it more mature, confident with yourselves, calmer as people, mellower because you've traveled that much more, seen that much more, done that much more?
I'm not necessarily.
And we get into simplicity of songs as well. No longer
Yeah, but I'm not
no
sure
longer
that
do we have you
I'm
trying
not sure
to.
that that's right. I think.
No longer are you trying to prove your like.
Yeah, but I think that has more something to do with just kind of boredom of where we left off last time, and it's like, well, last time the whole stuff thing was very political, and this time it's like let's do something different than what we did last time. So it's like, the whole trip that we're going through right now is that we really just. I think got really bored with where things were going, and it was like.
Were you fed up trying to prove that you were like fucking probably maybe the greatest like filmmaker and like fucking total like completely and utterly drums everywhere and percussionist if you want. I mean, it's much less of a like players album and much more of a fucking car stereo album in that sense.
Yeah, but I mean just. In everything that I can relate to it, we just got bored with what we did, and when we finally, we took, it was like, for the first time, we had an opportunity to sort of really, because we needed to, obviously, really rid our systems of the whole thing that we'd done before, and it was like, just that 7 months that we took time off, when we finally started, being a band again, in like, May and June of last year, and then started writing songs again. I was like, me and James just instantly connected on the fact that it's like, this just ain't happening what we did before anymore. It's like, I mean, it's not like, it's like these huge discussions. I just remember one night we were sitting on a Triple Rock, and it was just like,
it's got to be different.
Well, not even so much like that. It was just like, let's just write some shorter songs. Yeah, okay. That long stuff got kind of boring. Yeah, okay. It's just like that low key where we just sit and throw that kind of shit.
Do you think with you, and I'll throw this at you like I asked you yesterday, do you think you remembered what it's like to listen to an album as opposed to just play on one and be a musician? Do you think you remembered how it was to be a fan again, and that you maybe had lost depth of that the more the writing had gone on?
I think that probably dealing with justice in a live situation had a lot to do with the way the new album's turning out, because I think that playing some of the songs off on Justice for All live over the course of the 8 million date tour that we're on just got really, I don't know, just there was something that wasn't right when we played some of those songs, like the title track and like Eye of the Beholder and even Shortest Straw and Black. And I mean, they're great songs for what they're worth, but I don't know, it's just very strange when we would play some of the older material and back to back with it. Say even just like a song as old as Seek and Destroy, where, I don't know, there was just something about the way that it was, that you had to sit there and think about what you were doing all the time. And these songs were so progressive that it became like sort of thinking man's. So you sit there and you never really completely loosen up and get into the gig because you're always thinking about the fucking satanic drum fill that's coming out of left field in fucking 30 seconds that you have to do.
Right.
You have to go from 9/4 time to 11/16 time or whatever. That's like, for me, where I was sitting, I mean, just playing Seek and Destroy and Bells and Creeping Death and that kind of shit. It was just Am I Evil? That sort of stuff was like, fuck. You could really get into those songs in a physical way because you just could lose yourself in them. And I think that probably had quite a bit to do with the new direction that material needed to take for us to stay interested. But again, with everything else, I don't think you can just pinpoint it down to like one thing, because I think it just, after making 3 records that were all going in the same direction, it was just time to really, it was just time to fucking throw a curve, it was time to just, it's like, wait a minute, let's just not keep going in the same direction. It's like, let's do something that just fucking, that's gonna be like a challenge when we write it. And it was like, when we sat down and said, okay, let's write an album full of like 12 shorter songs. It's very important that you understand it's shorter, not short, because, by anybody else's standards, they're not specifically like short.
Right, they're not 3 minutes.
Yeah, they're just very compact, and they stick to one thing. And trying to write an album like that, I remember clearly on Justice, we sat there and we tried to, but we just weren't capable of doing it. And this time around we were. And it just, I don't know, so like I said, it's a combination of different things. This time we were just really able to pull it off. And it was like, it just kind of, it was fun. The song, when I look back and think to the 6, or 10 weeks or whatever, we were writing songs back in June, July, and August of 1990. It's like, it was fun. It was like a real, just the whole fact of like writing was a challenge again, in a way that was like, this is something new and different, and it just gets you really excited when you're doing something that turns into like a challenge instead of just like, well, here's just, more of the same shit that we've been doing for the last 6, 8 years. And I just think that for the mental stability, we just really needed to just throw it in a different direction. And it's like, so I'm sure a lot of people, when I sit and say that, they go, well, what does that mean? But it doesn't mean anything more than it's like, here's a song that just has simpler arrangements, and, it's like, it's still the fucking fattest guitar riffs of life that you can find, and, all that. I think it's a lot more of a guitar-oriented album than the last couple were. I really felt that, me as a drummer, I felt that I'd proven, to myself, and I guess to a lot of other people, that it's like, I can play, blah, blah, blah. And I think because when we first started Metallica, none of us could play. And I was like, 1, 2, 3, 4, let's start a band. Oops, now we have a record out where we can't play. So then it's like, fuck, we have to take lessons and we have to do all that shit. And it's like, I think for quite a number of years we were really insecure about our own abilities as performers, and that made us want to like get that so much more across. So everybody was kind of caught on their own trips. And it's like, now I think we're all just so confident of our own abilities that it's like the drums, if I don't do a drum fill on a song, I still feel great about it, because it doesn't mean that I can't do the fucking drum fills, drum fills of life if I have to, but it's just like, maybe this song or the vibe now doesn't call for it, and end the story.
Right.
So, in terms of that, I mean, it's a lot more of a band thing in terms of the overall, the last record, just the drums were really up front in the way the songs were written, in the way the album was put together, and the mix and everything like that. And I never thought I would say this, but it's like I feel completely comfortable and confident and great about the fact that the drums are taking a different role in the whole thing. It's much more, the drums, I look at them, much more of a groove kind of a thing. Now, I think when I hear the new stuff now, there's like a groove and a bounce and kind of a rhythm thing happening that we've never had before. We also finally sat there and said, well, what's the story with the bass? And it's like, well, wait a minute, it doesn't say anywhere in the rules of how to make a record, rule 12, the bass always has to play the same as the guitar, like we'd always done. It's like, after 8 years, it's like, well, wait a minute, the fucking bass maybe could hang with the drums and just kind of keep like a rhythmic, bouncy kind of a thing happening in the background, and just let the guitar riffs do all the fucking talking.
Right.
And do more of just kind of a groove thing in the background. And that way the bass will be a lot more there in terms of a mix kind
Writing
of thing.
songs as opposed to pieces.
Yeah, but just, I think we finally sort of got comfortable with the role of the bass and what the bass does in, within Metallica. And I think Jason finally, I think, also feels comfortable. He's also playing a lot less than he ever has, and I think he was very insecure for a couple of years too about really proving himself as
Right,
an
to
excellent
you
bass
guys.
player. And
Right.
yeah, but also to
The world.
the whole kind of vibe where he came from, with that whole underground flotsam. It's like, I can play a million miles an hour and blah blah blah. And the Steve Harris, 800 notes a minute and all that, which is fine. But it's just not what we're into right now. You know what I mean?
No, I know.
And it's like, it was like, wait a minute. It's like, here's the fucking guitar riff of life, and here's the rhythm section in the background setting up like these grooves that just makes the shit bouncy and makes you fucking tap your foot to it and makes you fucking bob up and down in a way that I've never seen, Metallica stuff do before. I mean, when I play this, it's like, it's impossible not to fucking sit, not to just sort of rhythmically kind of
move with it,
rock with it, and it's like, it's kind of a different thing. That, also just, I don't know, as far as my own trip is concerned, I'm not saying that the band thing, but I'm just like, as far as my own trip is concerned, and where my drumming, on a personal level was taking me, was like, I just, people like, Phil Rudd and stuff like that, it took me, I guess, 8-10 years to like appreciate somebody like him and like really understand that, Phil Rudd, how much of a thing he actually had to do with like the old AC/DC thing, and it was not just all Angus and Malcolm, but the way Phil Rudd played drums on those early AC/DC records is so much a part of that groove thing that's going on. And it's like, I just, as a drummer, in the last like year and a half or whatever, been getting really into that side of drumming, of not being so worried about the solo aspect and the ability aspect, and also realizing that it's just as difficult, or if not more difficult, because it's not something that you can really like study. It's not like you can study the most intricate sideways drum feel, and it's just a matter of getting it down and practicing it. But the feel thing, that's not something you go to fucking school or read about in a book.
Let me put this one to you as well, because it's a pretty standard one, but this is Metallica's Back in Black. This is Metallica's.
That'd be nice.
This is Metallica's Physical Graffiti or whatever. I mean, Metallica's Master of Reality or Volume 4 or whatever. I mean, is it?
Metallica's Master of Puppets.
It's Metallica's, it's Metallica's fucking Dark Side of the Moon. I mean, is it? Do you see it like that? The cornerstone of going into a completely new fucking country than the one you've been in for the last few years. I mean, is this like the point? I mean, I think
it's too easy to sit there when you make a record and always sit there every 3 years and go, this is it, this is the big cheese, this is the one that's gonna whatever,
But that this might very well be.
Yeah, I know. So you just look.
Okay.
I think it's too easy to sit and approach every record with that mentality. But obviously, I'd be lying to you if I didn't feel somewhere deep within me that, this is, I don't know, there's just a different feeling in the air this time around. But there comes a point where, obviously, from a success point of view, it's like, the ascent so far, knock on wood, obviously, has kept pointing upwards, and is still, pointing upwards and upwards. But there comes a point where it's like, I don't think that we're ever going to be the kind of band that's going to all of a sudden, sell 10 million records or whatever, because, just the things that we deal with lyrically, the way that we play our music, the way that all the factors, involved add up. It's just like, there comes a point where it's like, sure, we could sell, 3, 4, 5, God knows, 6 or whatever, but I don't ever see it going to like a Bon Jovi kind of Slippery When Wet or Hysteria.
Taking off, right?
I just don't think, that there comes a point where just because of who we are, what we do, subjects that we deal with, the way that we play our music, it just turns people off at one point or another. But if we can make a record like what we're making right now every 3 years for quite a while, so obviously at one point or another it's going to start leveling off a little bit. We can't just keep. But I think this is hopeful. This is probably, if this record goes as great as the feeling is right now, then this is probably the one that's going to sort of be the last biggest jump. Because,
Right.
you know,
Well,
maybe
that's what I mean.
after the next one, it really can't jump much higher. You know what I mean?
No, I know.
So it's like, so you get, this is the record that hopefully will put us up to the next, you know, the one level. I mean, it's never like there's only one level left or whatever, because then the challenge is going to be sustaining and making great records.
Right.
And whatever, you know.
The point.
And the same way that Back in Black was the album that did that for AC/DC, that really solidified it as major fucking contenders or whatever. Or, you know, like I said, I mean, I want to hopefully be able to write 12 great songs every 3 years and keep making albums that will have the same excitement about them as we do now. But because this is something that's a little off the beaten path of what we've done the last 3 years, the last 3 records, obviously it's very exciting in a kind of different way because we're meddling with things that we've not meddled with before, and that's what makes it exciting.
As people, now going on to a personal, as people looking at each of you as individuals and yourselves, what are the things you've seen, I mean, maybe by standard?
In terms of the interplay between us, I think we're respecting each other a lot more than we ever have before. I mean, we always used to, you know, I mean, we still wind each other up a lot.
Somewhat
stuff
take
like,
the piss out of each other.
Yeah, but I think that, I mean, in terms of 4 personalities, we're all, I think, very much finding our own niche in terms of who we are and what each of us do and where each of our heads are at and how we cope with that individually and between the band members. And I think that we give each other a lot more space than we ever have before. And I think when you sit and give somebody else more space than you ever have before, then you also feel more comfortable about the thing that you're doing yourself. And it's like, you know, I mean, when you're in a band, you know, being in a band, I mean, again, it's going to sound a little cliche, but, I mean, it's true, you know, when you're in a band, like in the early days, you know, it's like that whole gang mentality of, you know, me and James lived together for, you know, like 6 years or whatever. It's like, Mustaine was sleeping on the fucking couch. It's like, it becomes very much kind of that gang kind of thing, and nobody sort of strays outside of
the gang,
of that gang thing. So it's like, you know, I think we're all like a little weary of in the beginning of sort of breaking out of, you know, we're big bad Metallica and this is how we're perceived, so this is how we should deal with it, you know, kind of a thing. And I think, you know, like, I just clearly remember, you know, like, first when we started, like, living apart and stuff, it was like, shit, you know, James is going to come over and look at my new house, will he like my couch, you know, it's like, if I buy this kind of couch, what is James going to think, you know, it's like, I'm sitting there going, I mean, James doesn't have to fucking sleep on this couch, or sit on this couch, or live on this couch. It's like, we're just like, I think we're all a little like wary, each of us, of what the other guy in the band or what somebody else is going to think about whatever that person would get up to on his, like, in his own turf, on his own. It's like, okay, well, if I do this, you know, what's so-and-so going to feel about it or whatever. It's like, I think when it comes to our personal lives and to our private lives, now we're very much at peace with all that, and I think that we feel...
You can accept each other's differences.
Yeah, I think we accept each other's differences a lot better than we ever have before, and it's like, you know, I do this, you know, I live and breathe Metallica 24 hours a day. I think everybody copes with that and understands that, and I'm the fucking, you know, always on when it comes to that side of it, and, you know, this is what James's trip is, this is what Jason's trip is.
Well, what are their trips? As you see it, I mean, you know, I'll ask them, of course, but...
what are their trips? Their trips...
Just like, you know, the way you
said
your trip is...
Into, you know, I'm like...
rock and roll thing,
yeah, I'm a lot more
into
the rock and roll thing as like a whole, like, life thing. It's like, but, you know, again, you know, that... I'm not going to sit and justify it, but it's like, it's got nothing to do with, you know, we sold X amount of records or Y amount of records.
You've always been a fan,
I've always been like a puncher, and it's like I've always been like, you know, ever since, you know, the whole story with Deep Purple and blah blah blah. It's like I've, you know, followed bands around on tour and traveled around the globe to you know, deal, you know, with, you know, hang around and be with other bands and that whole kind of thing, and, you know, Motorhead and Diamond Head and all that shit.
Right.
All been, obviously well documented, but it's like I finally feel, again now, I finally feel at ease with the fact that it's like, I'm just completely and totally into all that shit on a 24-hour-a-day basis, and I never turn off from it. And it's like, where in the past I might have been like a little like weary about it, or it's like, well, gee, what's so-and-so gonna think if I do this and that? It's like, this is who I am and this is what I do, and I feel completely comfortable about it. Where I realized this is how I've always been since I was like 10 years old.
So you're not
and now
gonna.
I'm 28, and it's just basically I'm living an extension of what I've always been in terms of when it comes to my relationship with that whole rock and roll kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Right. So there's no more justifying and no need to
No, I
feel.
don't feel I need to because I'm completely at ease with it.
Mm-hmm.
So when you ask about, what is everybody, I'm definitely, the kind of just guy that's more into the whole scene and all that, and what everybody, checking out what other people get up to and just keeping tabs on what's going on in this soap opera called the music business,
Mm-hmm. But
and it's like, so everybody is doing their own thing. I think everybody now gives each other the amount of space that they need, and because everybody does that, everybody now feels completely comfortable about what everybody else gets up to, and we're I think we're just defining our personalities between us and within ourselves in the way that we never have before. And obviously that also comes with just like growing as fucking people, like I said, we're 28 years old now, and we're not 18 or 20 anymore, and the bottom line is that, it's a different vibe.
another topic, videos.
I'm sure there'll be videos. I know there will be.
There will be videos, obviously, for MTV, etc., etc.
Do a video for each song. We'll do 2 videos for each song.
Alright, why don't you just talk about the fucking filming project that's been going on?
Well, about a week into the project, Mensch calls over, I just had a brainstorm, and why don't we document what you guys are doing in the studio just for the hell of it? And I don't know, I think Peter just felt that, he'd heard the demos, and there was a good chance, like we were talking about before, that this was going to be, a kind of just a cool, album or whatever. And then he felt that it could be cool. I guess he just, at that time, had just done something with Jacker, where they had all these cool clips lying around from like when they were recording like early albums and stuff like back in the late 60s and early 70s, and it was just like, it would be cool to film it. So we said, well, fuck, basically, hired a couple of guys to come out and just basically document whatever we do out in the studio. We picked 6 of the 12 songs because, them filming, every time somebody, goes to the fucking bathroom out in the studio could get a little much in terms
Good
of...
bathroom, though.
Great bathroom, but...
I like the way the seat is on level with the wood.
Even though it's a great bathroom, it just seemed like that would be a bit much. So we picked a good cross selection of the 12 songs, and just said, here, film these 6 songs, from the beginning, with the drums and with,
The shit going
like,
down.
Huh?
All the shit that goes down.
Yeah.
Do you have any of the arguments that happen?
Yeah. So,
is it going to tie in with this Seattle footage, or is that
I don't know. There's a lot of different options. We're sitting on $300,000 worth of video footage from these 2 nights in Seattle that's collecting dust in an electro safe somewhere.
That cost $300,000, that stuff?
Mm-hmm.
The Seattle stuff?
Mm-hmm. There's some different options. We don't know what we're doing yet, but we have all this Seattle shit going on, and we have all this stuff from the studio, and who knows what we're gonna do in terms of long form home stuff. So there are obviously different options. Maybe we'll do some stuff from Seattle in '90 and tie it into some stuff, or maybe Seattle in '92 or something.
The question is, the question will be, are you planning a Song Remains the Same style venture?
Not at this point, no.
Could you see that one day this would be a major release thing that you would put out in theaters?
No.
A la Rattle and Hum, a la The Song Remains the Same,
No, not at all.
No.
No, but I.
Would it amaze you if it turned up in that format in 3 years from now?
Yeah, because I don't think Metallica is big enough band to go into wide releasing deals. But you know, with all the shit that we're collecting, obviously there's a lot of possibilities for one day doing something really cool, and who knows, we might just, you know, maybe fucking put the whole thing out, you know, on like a 10-hour home video. I mean, just do something that, you know what I mean? There are a lot of possibilities when you have a lot of footage lying around, and it's like you could do all these weird things with it, and it's like, right now there's really nothing definite, but I doubt it's going to be turned into a movie. I don't want it to be, the thing about, you know, which you got to be a little careful with, especially like when you sit and record yourself in the studio, is that it doesn't get like a little too vain.
Yes.
You know, it's like, yo, look, here's me doing the fucking, you
Very
know,
very
track of life,
self-indulgent.
and
Right.
here's like, you know, Kirk playing his fucking balls off and stuff, and it's just like, it might get just
Well, people
like
also,
a little vain. So we'll see.
people will like to see the arguments that you
there's
guys
some,
have and everything.
you know, funny stuff on there. The point is that when you have cameras up your ass all the time when you're out in the studio, it becomes so secondary that you basically don't notice them anymore. And
Right.
it's kind of like, so they're just there and they kind of just fade into the background and stuff, and it's pretty cool. So,
Your true ugly selves come out.
yeah. And so that's as far as long form shit is concerned.
Right. Short form.
Music videos, I'm sure we'll do quite a few. You know, doing the one thing was cool, and I think it definitely whetted everybody's appetite to fuck with that medium again. And I think that we finally feel that from a video point of view, you can take the medium of video, and in the same way that you use, you know, making a record as something creative, that you can take a video and turn it into something that's cool and creative, and it's not something that just is there because it has to be there.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like, you know, the unwritten laws, you know, this is dictated, and here's the video. But I think that that's what we were always like, looking back on it now, I think we were always like, we just never had the foresight to sort of realize that from a video point of view, you can have just as much creative control or do as many things from a creative point of view as you can when you make a record. It's just like another outlet for creativity.
But it all links into confidence and self-confidence within yourselves and within the way you work as people. I mean,
also, you know,
maybe 2 years ago as a group you didn't get on as well as you do now. Maybe you didn't understand each other as well at that stage, whereas now you all understand each other maybe a lot better. I mean, you know.
Well, yeah, but I think the major reason is just that when we did the one video, it was such a cool thing. I was like, well, why should we not do this more? Because this is really fun. And obviously, you know, it goes without saying that the fucking videos are not going to be anything like the one thing or whatever. But I definitely think that we all kind of look forward to fucking around with a couple of video clips. And, you know, there's certainly some songs on the album that lend themselves to that kind of a vibe. You know, the thing that's scary about videos is that you just got to be careful that you still retain some of the indirectness of how most of our songs are, and that when you do a video, it's like, boom, there's the visual. This is how you always, you know, when you think of a song, this is how you always interpret it. Do you know what I mean? Just try to avoid that as much as possible. It's going to be the challenge, and that's what I look forward to fucking with.
Let's see some of it. Well, first of all, about the new stuff, let me ask you, which 3 songs on the new record are you like the most into, the ones that do the most for you, and for what reason?
Okay. As usual, I pretty much like the faster ones. I like Holier Than Thou. Not just because of the cool bass thing, but it moves really good. That's like a real Metallica type of song. Plus, the riff is kind of it's got a huge hook to it.
Right.
Plus, it's kind of, I think, unique.
Right.
It's kind of the way that it rolls around.
Right.
So, I like that one. I also like Through the Never, which is another fast one.
Right.
And I like that for the same type of reason. The fast groove, it kind of, to me, feels like a fast driving type of song, like you're driving your car real fast.
Right. Kind of goes in a cycle, isn't it? It's kind of cyclic. Yeah, I like that one. Yeah.
And also on that song, the way that song.
Right.
You know, that really has a lot of weight and a serious mood.
Right.
Almost kind of mesmerizing type of thing to it.
When you look at James's lyrics and when you look at what he's writing about, I mean, do you ever sit back and kind of look and think, oh, what the fuck's going on here?
Yeah, sometimes I do. It's some of these new ones, you know.
Twisted as fuck.
Yeah, they're some of them are right to the point, which is kind of different for him.
Yeah.
But then the other ones that do make you kind of churn a little bit and could think about, you know, could go about 4 or 5 different ways, you know.
Right.
Those ones, he's still got that going on. So yeah, that stuff. If you're asking if it's thought provoking for me, yes.
I mean, do you ever actually go up to him and say, "Can I ask you like where you managed to find this shit," or is it just like accepted that this is what he does and this
Yeah, you know, by now it's pretty much a standard, and his standards are higher than all of ours, so he's gonna, you know, naturally come up with shit, and everybody expects him to come up with great stuff. I definitely let him know that I think it's great, though. I never hold back about saying whether it's a certain couple of words, a certain line, a certain paragraph.
Right.
I always make sure to express my opinion. You know, 97% of the time it's in a positive way. So.
Right. As far as I mean, obviously now, it was pretty interesting during an interview I was doing with James actually about a year ago, and obviously a year's gone. He pointed out that, you know, you have been in the band like, you know, longer than Cliff or anyone was. And do you feel with this record now, I mean, do you feel much more in tune and much more, I mean, it's just like this is the first album you feel you've really been a full part of?
Yes, definitely.
I mean, maybe you want to talk about how and why, in what sense musically you feel more of a part.
Okay, well, the thing is that it's finally taken us 10 years to come around to realizing that it needs to be more of an orchestration type of thing, more than one-dimensional thing where there has, you know, the bass part is there, and, you know, it's actually thumping a bass part rather than just doubling the guitars.
Right.
You know, like any given thrash band, you know.
Right.
Just the bass is just duping the guitars and the lower, you know, thing. So, this time it's actually a band where Lars and I are working together to lay down a huge thing, a huge foundation thing. Guitars have their own things on top of it. It's become a big learning experience for me. For one, with Bob Rock, him liking bass so much to begin with and being so in favor of having big bass on records, that helped me a lot when we started developing my sound, when we started to work to get my sound.
Right.
It made me feel so much better. And then once he started actually working with me and maybe making suggestions on a part here, a part there, a groove thing here,
Right.
this or that, you know, it just kept building and building.
Because before you used to lock really tight in on James, and now it's like much more as though you're playing a bass.
Right, it's definitely a band type of thing now. And I do feel that this is the first one that
Do you think that's also maybe because you feel less pressure to like prove what a good bass player you are, and it's like you can just get on with like being a part as opposed to having to say, well, look, you guys pick me, this is what I am good, listen.
Yeah.
Do you feel there is some of that
Yeah,
to prove?
That's still in the back of my head somewhere. I guess that's always going to be there, that type of thing. But it's when it was brought around that even, you know, maybe a bit simpler of a part, when it was brought to my realization that just because it does just 8 notes and a change here and there doesn't necessarily mean it is actually simpler.
Right.
I found that laying down a groove and keeping in an exact time and, you know, not fiddling all over the place
Right.
is actually a challenge in itself, you know, in the recording studio compared to the stuff that I was used to doing.
Right. Yeah.
So it was, but as far as feeling that, you know, that I had to prove myself, I still felt that I had to just because I knew that I was going to have, I was going to be heard on this record, and so I wanted to lay down the bass thing because I knew that's the only way that it was going to happen. And so I'm finally realizing that what the bass player's job really is. I think I've known it all along, but a matter of applying it myself. You know, it's just now coming around. I guess part of growing up or whatever.
Is it a completely fulfilling thing at this point? I mean, do you feel any need for like extra expression in your own projects, or are you just quite happy sitting where you're sitting and doing what you're doing?
I'm really happy with what's going on. Definitely what we got on tape as far as the recording is concerned. I'm really happy with that. The warmth and the solidness of that. got on tape, which something I was very weary about was just like the last record, too overproduced and too,
Right.
you know, what do you call it?
Basically, whether you'd
Drived and,
Right.
you know, just like analyzed way too much.
Right.
Okay, so this is something that is making me a bit happier too. Is we're just kind of letting it go as it goes. You know, we'll sure fix up a couple of pushes here and this and that, but
Right.
pretty much the rough mix is
Right.
really, really good. So
Did you feel it was almost a struggle to be like, you know, to feel that? I mean, not like the people didn't see, but for yourself, for you to feel that you were, you know, a quarter of this unit, and that you were a quarter of what was going on, and that you were like, you know, as much a part of it as anyone else. Did you?
yeah. Anything to do with the live thing, and any of that, whether it's live recording or live video or you know whatever that, any of the live stuff, I feel completely in control, completely strong.
Right.
As opposed to some of the studio stuff, I really sit back and observe and try to learn as much stuff as I can. I don't feel as strong in the studio, or when say we're twiddling knobs or they're talking about some kind of technical stuff.
Right.
I feel ignorant to a lot of that. So that's the difference. I definitely feel a quarter, I think, pretty much all the time, but I just feel stronger live.
Right. That's pretty interesting. All right. Rolling. Yes, we're talking about leads, and they seem a little like definitely more. There seems to be a totally different variety to what you're playing.
Well, I definitely did a lot more listening than playing this time around. And what I mean by that is it's gotten to the point in my musicianship where I can listen to something and pretty much know, you know, what's going on, you know, I mean, from a technical point of view.
Right.
You know, and I can figure out what he's doing from, you know, just listening to the thing.
Right.
I can listen to it and, like, you know, go over to my guitar and play it.
Right.
And instead of, like, you know, sitting in my room doodling for 6 or 7 hours a day,
Right.
I just listened.
Well, I listen to lots of different stuff.
Lots of different stuff, and, yeah.
It's quite fun, really, isn't it?
Pardon?
It's fun to sit and listen to things for hours on end. It gives you ideas.
Yeah, I just got a lot more ideas that way.
Right. Do you think that's the thing with all of you? I mean, I said this to Lars as well. I said I felt that his drumming on this record was indicative of remembering what it's like to hear a record again as opposed to play on one. And, I mean, and have to prove your worth as a musician to the world and, like, look at me, you know, we are not, you know, what you think we are with it. Do you think there's been a lot of purging of that, and that's why this album's maybe more direct?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, we're definitely playing more to our own taste rather than to, you know, what our concept of what people might want to hear us play.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, there is no such. I mean, Metallica. I mean, do you think you're very comfortable with the fact that as a band, it does what it wants once and for all? Whereas maybe the last album, you had to do the last album to get to this one.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I mean,
I think we definitely had to, you know, go through that whole progressive thing and, you know, experiment a little with sound.
Right.
And, you know, when I put it all into retrospect, Stefan, I mean, we kind of fell short of our original, you know, vision.
In what sense?
Oh, just, you know, well, we experimented with, you know, certain sounds. It didn't quite capture, you know, what we wanted to capture. Songwriting-wise, you know, we played out the whole progressive thing a bit, you know, on that album.
Right.
And, I mean, to just repeat that again on this album, I mean, something that we really didn't feel like doing.
Right. I mean, because it's concepts out the window. I mean, there are no real concepts. It's like, you know, I mean, I've seen, you know, your general artwork, and I've seen your campaign, and, like, you know, there's no hooks. There's no like, you know, title to go under. I mean, that's a somewhat naked approach to the whole thing, don't you think?
Yeah, it's just, you know, the 12 songs, and there you have it. No huge concepts at all. And, I mean...
And is that sort of thing...
Concepts are, you know, I mean, if you want to get down to the nitty-gritty, all the concepts are, you know, boundaries that you keep yourself in.
That's interesting. Yeah, so it's the 3, and as a unit, do you feel that it's like less 4 people and more like a band, or do you feel that it's maybe? Which way do you feel it's going? I think it sounds more like a band.
Oh yeah, this is probably the most band-oriented album we've done.
I mean, it certainly doesn't sound like you each recorded in different continents, which I think was probably the case with the last one. Well, that's not. I mean, we shouldn't. It sounds like almost trashing. I mean, the last record was really good, and I mean, it did what it did. And
don't get me wrong. You know, I love Justice for All for what it is.
Right.
I just happen to think that this album is that much more. More of. It's a more accurate reading of where the band is right now.
Right.
Now, musically and conceptually. And
this is actually also might be something that ends up in your biography, which is why I'm asking this question. But if you could talk about 3 of your favorite songs on the record and why they are.
3 of my favorite songs?
Yeah. This is biography stuff.
Well, let's see. 3 of my favorite songs.
One of those questions.
Yeah, those questions. Well, I really like Anywhere I Roam. I mean, just the song is I don't know. I hate like talking about our songs.
That's fine. That's
like,
good.
Like this. But I like Sandman. I like Rome.
Right.
I like Sad.
Okay.
Tremendous.
Reasons?
And
just vibe.
Those songs I love to play.
Right.
And
just vibe-wise, you're into them, man.
Yeah. When we played Sad But True, it's so fucking heavy. It's because we tuned down.
Right.
Playing that song, the power under your fingertips is amazing.
Right.
You literally feel like you have 20 tons underneath you.
Sure. No. Well, Sandman as well. I mean, just relating to your personal interest, I think Sandman probably relates somewhat. I mean, it still starts to tread in the area of your personal interest of movies and characters and just so maybe you want to talk a little bit about that time. I mean, did you feel a certain empathy with the song on that basis or not? About the subject matter, what did it mean to you? I mean,
I like I like the concept of a foreboding character. Having a foreboding character in our songs. I always like that concept, because of the movies. A lot of that has. I mean, for instance, on Master Puppets, thing that should not be. I was so into that concept because I was heavily into Lovecraft and.
Right.
And just having, that character.
Right.
And having a song about that character.
Right. I mean, as a kid, Sorry, hang on. Did you used to create
all these monster movies and such?
But did you create these characters to scare yourself? I mean, were you into self-scaring? You know what I mean? Like some people like to hide under bed when they're kids, hide under bed covers and think about the.
Well, it's just fun being scared,
Why? That's a
okay. You want to get this whole psychological part of it?
Yeah, go on. This is
reaffirmation of
Now we're back to your personal page, you see, for the magazine. So yeah, you.
This is a reaffirmation of life, It's fun being scared because it makes you feel more alive. Then you might feel just sitting there on the couch, fucking picking your nose.
So sometimes it's fair to say that you might or might not imagine something going on just to put yourself on edge?
Yeah.
Do you still do that?
Well, yeah, in different ways now.
I mean, so it's not at the stage where you might be sitting on the couch having just watched fucking The Shining and imagine there's a torrent roaming the building there on Larrabee who might kick your door in and take you for, I mean, you don't sit there and conjure that sort of fear for yourself, right?
Well, whenever I get scared, you get a big, I don't know, I guess it's with everyone, you get a big rush of adrenaline.
Right.
And, that's kind of similar with, being on stage also.
Is that the sort of fear you subscribe to then, stage fear now? I mean...
Well, let's just put it this way.
Can all the kids feel confident that they're scaring the shit out of you?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I like to think that I'm also scaring the shit out of them with, the pure volume.
Right. Well, All right. Well, hang on. See ya.
Well, I mean, there was a situation where there was a lot of, the hurry up and wait,
Right.
You were putting out that sort of situation, it's just like, hurry up, wait. Hurry up, we gotta do this, wait.
Uh-huh.
But when it came down to my doing, my bit on the album,
Right.
it was really stressed, by Bob and by, just everyone else. Just take your time and do it, as best as you can, and don't worry about, anything else.
Uh-huh.
Just go in there and do the album, do the parts, do your parts, and do them as well as you can.
Because people never assume there are nerves connected with recording an album, but there are, I suppose, right?
I'm sorry?
People never connect nerves with recording, but I suppose there are, right?
Yeah, because you're always wondering, whether or not you've played to the best of your abilities, and if you can do the part better or not.
Right.
And that always comes into the situation.
Right.
And that's kind of stressful,
Right.
to wonder if if you should stop here or if you should keep on trying to get it better.
Uh-huh.
Or if you can live with certain things that are put down on tape.
Uh-huh.
I mean that in itself is stressful.
But you guys have just learned to live a little easier this time around, right?
Pardon?
You probably have learned to live a little easier this time around. Am I correct?
Yeah, we gave ourselves some space to breathe.
Right.
And we pretty much told ourselves, just not to worry about it, and in the end it'll be all right.
Right.
And that's something that Bob said to Bob would say, don't worry, man, we'll get it done, and it'll be fine, everything will be fine.
Good.
I mean, you have to. I mean, you have to be somewhat critical of yourself.
Right. Otherwise, it's just crap. But
Yeah.
But if you push yourself over the hill, then it just becomes stupid.
Yeah. Exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself, Steph.
So, obviously...
What the fuck is this thing?
What's that?
Oh. So what are we doing here?
I just... I asked Lars, I said to him, like, what the fuck's going on, where does James get his stuff from? I mean, just going through, like, the record, I mean, it's like, the Sandman, and then the Sad But True. I mean, just where do you get the idea for a Sad But True, for example? I mean, what is it in your day that suddenly makes you think of writing about a subject like that?
Well, I mean, the title's been hanging out for a long time. It's just trying to get a subject that kind of builds around a cool title. And most of the shit's from movie kind of shit, or a combination of different things. Like Sad's kind of, it started out like a kind of schizophrenic kind of thing.
Right.
It's more like, that movie Magic.
Oh, Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah.
Right.
Similar to that, how something
okay.
kind of takes him over, and
yeah, it's a horrible film.
Just the fucking good and evil in everybody, and how certain parts of you take over at unopportune times.
I mean, but is that just something that you've observed over the years, or is it a recent thing that's like growing and growing? I mean, is it related to what you fucking deal with every day, and you see people and you think, of their 2, 3, 4, 5 sides to them, and I mean, is it that like
don't really have a handle on their emotions, and I think everyone fucking knows their limits, and sometimes they fucking cross them.
Yeah,
Certain people make you cross them.
Right. I mean, is it sort of... So, I mean, just looking at it, just that song, for example, someone might assume you to be a person fascinated with, like, the more morbid and, like, fucking ugly things. Would that be something that you would want to talk about? I mean, would you agree with that if someone said that? Yeah, I am fascinated by the fucked up shit a lot more than happy-go-lucky the sun's shining and everything's blue sort of stuff, or?
Well, actually, this album I think is a little more happier lyrically, but
I mean, there's one song that I noticed that was obviously very, very happy. Nothing Else Matters, of course, was
right.
pretty straightforward and just, somewhat emotional, I suppose, for you to write. But, I mean, going from, like, the fucking Sad But True and The Unforgiven as well, which is another one, which I'm astounded, like, how do you come up with that, the idea of just, like, an old man, like, sitting there full of misery? I mean, it's what he hasn't done. I mean, it's intriguing. It's like your mind gets onto these tracks and
yeah. I mean, a few of the songs kind of tie in together. But Unforgiven, basically the guy's pissed off at himself because he tries to please everybody. All his life he tried, and in the end, no one really gives a shit what you fucking did for them. It's like what you accomplished yourself.
Right.
And he did fucking dick. So, and the Holier Than Thou kind of ties in with that. Like everyone's worried about what everybody else is doing, kind of,
Right.
Your life, fucking, you're living your life. Someone else's life is the basis of your own, kind of,
Right. You live off someone else's.
Yeah.
But I mean, is this all like? Obviously, you start writing the lyrics pretty, like, they're not exactly the first thing that you come up with, and it seems to me a lot of these were done while you were in LA, and once again,
yeah, there's about 3 of them that got finished up. Most of the subjects and titles were pretty much together. Struggle Within wasn't really done. Holier Than Thou wasn't completely done.
So it is really fueled by, like, I mean, you haven't talked that much in the past, and I know you don't particularly like doing this sort of stuff, explaining lyrics, etc. But so people can pretty much gauge what you are from the lyrics you're writing at any given time. Yeah.
I would say so.
In which sense?
Oh, I don't really like to acknowledge it, or that I really see myself in the shit. But other people kind of do, I think. But everyone in the band feels the same.
Right. Well, it's funny because, I mean, as I say, I asked them, I asked Lars, I'm like, where does he get this stuff from? And Lars is like, I don't know, he just tells us, what it's about, and we don't really push it any further. It's almost like an unspoken agreement that, like, you come in and you explain it, and, I mean, there was a lot of confidence in your opinion. Is that true to say?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I always took pride in all the lyrics, and some of the other people come up with, like, subjects, and it's really hard to, unless it's really good, it's really hard to personalize it, If someone has a subject that they really, like, fucking, it blows them away, and it's, like, really from within themselves, if it's not really a part of me, I can't really get confident and write some really intense lyrics.
Right.
So pretty much all the shit is really from within.
So, yeah, because I mean, I've seen you as well on a side thing. I mean, just a little question about the doodles at the top of your lyric pages when you're writing them out. I mean, do those help you get the words together in a way?
Sure. They kind of create a little...
Do those little sketches and stuff.
Yeah, it kind of helps.
Yeah, no, it was interesting. So there's other ones that I wanted to ask about. Through the Never as well as another one that intrigued me just for the fact, I mean, the hugeness of the universe, the whole thing. I mean, once again, what makes you think of that, of a late night? Fucking, let me write about the hugeness of the universe. It's a pretty...
It's scary. The fear of the unknown is one of the fucking scariest things ever. I mean, because it just ponders. You just ponder on it forever,
Right.
There's no answer. It's like you can everyone's made up their own answers, about, there's religious shit, there's,
right.
How things came about being.
So would you say that you're quite happy to, fucking flip off the comfort part and go right forward and, stare your fear in the face? I mean, standing up and looking up in the sky or whatever and thinking, fuck, I don't know where this ends, and no one does, because it doesn't. I mean...
Yeah.
I mean, is that like...
On what's beyond this black shit, or... It definitely freaks me out. Sometimes I, don't feel like looking up in the sky, everyone has trouble confronting fears here and there.
Right.
But a lot of that shit came for that Cosmos thing with fucking Carl Sagan.
Do you think that, fucking, not saying, you know, when you get older, you get more mature, but do you think that with age you do become more comfortable with things that, like, used to bug you a lot? And, like, you know, and look at yourself for a moment. Do you think that you're a lot more comfortable with dealing with things in general?
Sure.
Like,
yeah, I mean, everyone, you know, with practice, things get better. And just dealing with things, I don't know. It's just, when you get older, I don't know if your brain starts working better or fucking it got bigger or what the fuck, or you just start thinking about...
Would you say it's less anger?
There's less anger about things and yourself and how you really want to handle things, and
right.
You know.
I mean, there's less anger involved as well. I mean, you don't seem for a while in like the mid 80s and maybe to the late 80s and that there was almost you always seemed pretty like pissed off about something or another, and in the last 2 years or so, you really seem to maybe not be so angry anymore. I mean, is that, you know, does it come down to just like fucking realizing that not, you know, everyone's like a moron, or do you become better at spotting people you want to, you know, or do you just, what?
I think I've discovered more about myself. I think a lot of that had to do with, you know, you're not really confident about yourself, or you just really want to just fuck that shit, you forget it, you know, that ain't me, you know,
Right.
A little more stubborn, I think.
Right.
I mean, definitely still pissed off at shit. I mean,
but like you're not, you don't seem as like on edge or not on edge, but well, yeah, on edge. You don't seem as on edge and fucking just like generally, you know, be ready to be abrasive. You seem to be more of a fucking approachable than for, you know.
Huh?
It's just the way it is. Well, and does that also have something to do with the fact that you were happy to try vocal things with a producer that you like didn't know very well for the first time, and that you basically were treading I mean, would you think it's fair to say that you were treading into a land that you didn't know when you did your vocals this time?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's shit that I didn't really want to know about. You know, we just came in to this album. Everyone was pretty open-minded about the whole thing. It's like, we got some simple songs, we're just fucking gonna get in there and make it sound as fat and thick and heavy and textured as possible, and
right.
You know, either we're gonna go for it or we're just, you know, you can't just go halfway. Either we're gonna do it or not, you know.
Right.
And so we came in, and you know, vocally we approached the whole thing differently. We went, instead of trying to double every fucking word, every line, you know, go word by word, you know, no, start it over. He actually suggested things, which was, you know, before Fleming wouldn't really, he just pretty much
did what you guys
and like, this is how he sings, so I'm not going to fuck with it. You know,
right.
I was such an asshole that I wouldn't let him anyway. But Bob, you know, would suggest certain things, and at first I was like, oh man, fuck you, you know. Okay, here we go. Well, all right, you know, let's give it a shot, and then
right.
You know, definitely tried everything he suggested, and he tried, you know, things that I suggested, and, you know, at the end of the day, we'll just sit and go, no, that doesn't work, and then we agree, okay, you know, it doesn't.
Right.
So at least we tried everything, so it wasn't.
So it's like a whole new learning experience
Sure.
for you as well, which is probably pretty exciting when you come down to it, because you're learning new tricks and learn.
Well, sure. I mean, when someone comes and goes, hey, man, is that you singing? The fuck's that? You know? Hey, yeah.
I don't think it sounds. I mean, you know, people know it's you. I think it's got a lot more dimension and fucking, you know, general.
Well, I mean, it's single voice. It's more personality. It's not doubled, you know.
Right.
With the earlier shit, just kind of mushed it up a bit.
Right.
Here you can really hear. It's more aggressive in a way.
Do you think?
Because when you got two voices singing along next to each other, they smooth each other out. You don't really get the edge.
Right.
And so we got one fucking really kind of raging.
Right. No, it's definitely very angry at times. I don't think on the quota of heaviness anyone's got anything to worry about. But on the quota of delivering what is what do you think that for a while, even though you wouldn't have recognized it when you did Justice or whatever, that you sort of in a way caught in doing things the Metallica way, which was not to take in any outside opinion, to fucking just like, you know, and also to be the most progressive you could be. And I mean, do you think that was a trap that you suddenly realized you were in at the end of the last tour?
Yeah, well, it's like the Metallica. Metallica, there's no rules except for Metallica rules, That's
right.
what Bob
right.
We go, oh fuck, we're gonna, let's go in and let's do this shit, fucking, sure, fuck, let's try that, and then, we go, nah, and then you go, oh, okay, back to the Metallica rules,
Oh, so he would bend your ear about that then?
Oh, sure, he fucking would. All the time.
Yeah, just the balance of the whole thing. Where is it? My Friend of Misery was another lyric I wanted to go back to, which I guess concentrates on the maybe do-gooders who concentrate too much on trying to do good.
Yeah. All the do-gooders that if they don't do good, they feel like shit,
Right.
It's like, oh, I gotta, man. Fucking nothing. No one else is gonna do it, kind of.
Right. Wearing the world on your shoulders, pretty much.
Well, it's basically about complainers,
Oh, whiners.
Yeah, whiners, complainers, whatever.
And of Wolf and Man, which is, when is this like? When does the wolf thing come in from? Where are you into the wolf thing?
But it basically comes from kind of being out back in, well, it's not corny, but back to nature kind of shit,
Right.
That and Rome kind of have that kind of vibe.
Right, just like
With, no ties with anything. It's just, you're basically an animal on this planet. And back to the meaning of life, kind of shit.
Right. That's a good thing to fucking get back into. Do you find that, do you surprise yourselves when you, go in with the intention of making something, a little quicker than you used to, and then it just comes out to be pretty much the same amount of time spent on a record?
Or if not longer.
Does that, surprise you more than anyone, or?
Well, it's like the simpler the songs, the longer it took. It did, I don't know.
Yeah, that doesn't even...
The songwriting and everything, it sounds... It may sound strange, but the simpler the songs are, the more difficult they are. Because of you have room to breathe personally with your instrument. You have to really shine through because it's so stripped down.
Right.
You really have to show your talent.
Right.
Or solos go, there's a lot more open chord behind his solo, so he really has to, he doesn't have to stick to a pattern James's rhythm is going like this, so I really have to play in this scale.
Right.
Now it's more like, I really have to make this part sing and really shine through.
Right.
Especially vocally, too. A lot of shit on this album relying vocally, and I really had to, kind of work extra hard at it.
Yeah, well, you went to Canada for a week or so to fuck.
Yeah, we did that. Bob, everyone was pretty sick of LA. It got to a point where Bob really wanted to get home, and I said, fine. This is a perfect opportunity because vocals. I don't have to ship gear up or nothing. I just fucking bring my throat with me.
Right.
And got out of LA for a week, and it was nice. The weather was great, and there's a couple of things to do up there.
It seems overall...
A few long dinner breaks, you know what I mean?
Yeah, a few trips into the forest and shit. But it seems just overall, just to tie it all up, just the fact that you're doing more of your press shit than you ever used to, it suggests that you probably are a lot more proud, happier with this record than anything you've done for a while.
True. Plus, I think it's all in the big picture, whatever you want to call it. We approach this album in a certain way, and we're gonna go either all the way or none at all. So everyone's doing their share of press. Everyone's really.
Is it still hard for you to sit and answer questions about what you write though? I remember the lot when we done an interview a couple of years ago. You said it's really annoying for people to come up and say and tell you what the lyrics are about and then want you to respond.
Yeah.
Is that...
This one's a lot easier. I'm more confident with the lyrics itself, and it's a lot more personal. So you can ask the other guys, but they're,
Right.
They all have their own interpretations, which is fine.
Right. All right.
But I'm pretty much in control this time of how things come across.
That's cool. We'll leave it at pretty much.